Okie doke. So, welcome to the stream. Why am I getting 45% dropped frames? What's going on? Hey, there we go. Okay. I was on my proxy, so it was not wanting to do it correctly. So before we get into our crazy time cube bullshit, our wonderful friend Wicked Mud on Discord has created a video for us. Oh shit, I forgot to switch my audio. Logitech, there we go. Is that correctly? Okay, we're good. Thank you, baby. That's cool. I like that. It's all about imagery. Let me open up chat on my other window. Ooh. That's crazy. Look at that shit. That's fucking nuts. Wow. Alright, I'm all about that. Okay. Cool. So now we've seen, like, an actual, real video of Saturn. Or no, that was Jupiter. But now let's learn about the cube, the time matrix. Is this just time cube?
Danny True Magnified. Alright, I'm back. And today we're going to talk about Saturn. Some of the interesting things going on with Saturn. And there's a lot of crazy connections there, a lot to get into. So we're going to get right into it. Now, when NASA sent...
Here's our drinking game. We take a tiny sip anytime he says Saturn. I feel like I'll die. Let's try it.
A Voyager probe to Saturn in 1981, they said they came across this weird looking formation on the northern region of Saturn. And it basically looked like a hexagon circling in the middle of what they thought to be like a storm on Saturn's surface. And when they sent the Cassini probe in 2006, they got a really good look at this thing. And it was confirmed for sure that this was a perfect hexagonal shape, smack dab in the middle of this swirling whirlwind. And it never seemed to stop, like it was continually going on this swirling motion nonstop. And as they moved in closer, they realized not just how wide this thing was, because they estimated it to be about 18,000 miles wide. But they also found that this thing wasn't just sitting on the surface of Saturn, but it's also stretching out into the clouds of Saturn. And this hexagonal shape is basically like a tower that they estimate to be about 190 miles high. And this is when NASA officially started referring to this thing as a vortex. And here's where it gets real crazy. The southern hemisphere of Saturn also has a vortex. And there's all these different theories about what this vortex is.
This was a terrible idea.
How it formed and everything, but there's no official explanation as to what it is or why it exists at all. I should not be sipping every time. But what's interesting is that in 2002, the Cassini probe started detecting these radio emissions coming from Saturn. And these radio waves are constantly changing, but they continuously emit from the planet Saturn. And this has led to some theories that these radio waves are directly connected to these vortexes on the northern and southern hemispheres of the planet. And of course, we know NASA is full of you-know-what, but everything needs to be taken into consideration.
What?
Now, if you rewind for a bit and you go back and you look at the three major ancient texts, the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, you're going to find Saturn constantly being placed in this high level of importance. You're going to hear the Sabbath mentioned a lot.
Also, it's the the Vedas.
How the Sabbath should be revered. Now remember, for Orthodox Jews and even Orthodox Muslims, the Sabbath is Saturday. And then the word Saturday literally means the day of Saturn.
Oh my
because
God,
based off of the history that they give us, when the Greeks set up the 7 days of the week, they named Saturday after the god Saturn. So Saturday is the day of the god Saturn. And the Sabbath day is Saturday. And then if we go back and look at these ancient texts, we can look at the Bible where it says, "Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily, my Sabbaths ye shall keep. For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people." In this verse alone, you can see how serious the Sabbath is to the Lord in the Bible. So much so that anybody that doesn't keep the Sabbath is commanded by the Lord to be put to death. And he said unto them, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath." So right here, the Bible is giving you a clear connection, and a strong one, between God and the Sabbath.
Okay.
I mean, Lord of the Sabbath. That's pretty clear cut. "Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest. And holy convocation, ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings." So it's saying that the Sabbath is on the 7th day. And according to the international standard that pretty much everybody goes by except the United States, Canada, and Australia, Sunday is considered the 7th day of the week. But if you go back far enough, you can see how the days of the week have been flipped around and has led to all this confusion. And this is why you have Christians who worship on Sunday, while you have people who practice Orthodox Judaism,
That's the
Seventh Adventists,
opposite of
etc.,
what you
that
just
still
said.
honor the Sabbath day as Saturday. There's even confusion amongst Muslims where the day of prayer for the Muslims is Friday. But when you actually read the Quran, the original Sabbath day for the Sabt is Saturday. The word for Sabbath in Arabic, Sabt, translates to the word Saturday. And it's made a point throughout the Quran that there's something extremely important about the Sabbath. The Sabbath was appointed only for those who differed concerning it. And lo, thy Lord will judge me.
This is all gonna be a weird Christianity conspiracy, isn't it? I should be taking notes, right? Because, like, I don't know anything about... Well, I won't say anything. I have a passing surface level knowledge about Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Because honestly, to me, monotheism is like so boring. But they've got a lot of interesting lore, I guess, if you're into that. I don't know.
Between them on the day of resurrection, concerning that wherein they used to differ. And we caused the mount to tower above them at the taking of their covenant, and we bade them enter the gate prostrate, transgress not the Sabbath, and we took from them a firm covenant.
I wonder if when they translated this line from the original Hebrew, no, this would have been from Arabic, they specifically chose the terminology enter the gate prostrate because it would rhyme. Or if that's simply the most accurate translation.
"And ye know of those of you who broke the Sabbath, how we said unto them, Be ye apes, despised and hated. And we made it an example to their own and to succeeding generations, and an admonition to the God-fearing." So again, just like the Bible, you can see just how serious the Sabbath is made out to be in the Quran. Now, in Hinduism, they don't necessarily have one specific holy day, but each day of the week is dedicated to a particular Hindu god. And Saturday is dedicated to the god Shani. And the word Shani in Sanskrit actually translates to the word Saturn.
Oh
so
my
the
God.
god Shani is directly related to the planet Saturn. In Hindu mythology, Shani is looked at as the god of justice,
soon as I put
and he
out my
brings down
fucking
judgment
cigar.
on everybody, including all the other Hindu
Soon as I
gods. So
start
because of
putting
this,
out my
in
fucking
Hinduism,
black and
the
mild
planet
hair
Saturn
light.
is considered the
And
most
then
powerful
Saturn,
planet. Now, the
and
story
Saturn,
goes that
and
Shani's
Saturn.
father
But they don't say
is
it a single
actually the
fucking time
sun,
while I'm
and that he was born so close to the sun that when he was born, he came out of the womb
Okay, I'm just
completely
gonna drink.
black.
I'm just gonna drink casually. I'm not gonna keep going with the Saturn, because I had a tall boy of the Bud Light Orange on my way home from work today, and then I had a beer when I got home, and now I'm working on my. I guess technically this would be the fourth beer if the tall boy's two, and like. I'm not trying to get that lit 10 minutes into the stream, guys. Like, I'm sorry. We're gonna pace ourselves. We're gonna take our time. We're gonna drink responsibly. So we're gonna go. We're gonna keep going.
And if you look at
This
any
is
images of Shani, you're gonna see
like
that
a 20
he's
part
completely
series
black
too.
humanoid. And there's multiple temples all over India dedicated to Shani.
Look, it's a UFO, and he has 4 arms because he's an alien.
And there's multiple temples all over India dedicated to Shani, aka Saturn. There's at least 10 different shrines, all in different cities, all over India. And usually these statues of Shani are massive. He's usually depicted as like being 20 to 23 feet tall. And people show up in large crowds and perform rituals at
Shockingly,
these temples.
people depict
And
their
they say
gods
most
as
of these
extremely
temples
tall.
stretch back hundreds of
There's
years.
that one statue of Jesus that's like 50 feet tall and it's got Wi-Fi. Does that mean that Jesus was 50 feet tall? Probably. Actually. Someone hit Wendigoon up and be like, hey bro, are there any lines in the Bible that support Jesus being 50 feet tall?
Years. I think the most recent one is the Shani Dham Temple, but most of them stretch back hundreds of years. The Shani Singapore Temple goes back at least 400 years.
Boy.
And I don't think I really need to explain.
He's a
you
Sunday
can
school
see how
teacher.
Shani is depicted.
And he's also
and you got the whole
a
mythology there of
boy,
his
which
father
I
being the
appreciate.
sun. So him basically being a child of the sun and the very first child of the sun. There's so much there, but in Greek mythology, Saturn is a Titan, one of the original gods birthed out of that primordial chaos during the early stages of the universe. And as one of the Titans, the god Saturn goes by the name Kronos. And Kronos rules over all the other gods as king of the Titans.
Yes.
And he pretty much ruled over the entire universe in what they called the Golden Age. He was the god of agriculture, and he was also looked at as the god of time. He controlled time, and because of that, pretty much controlled the fate of every living thing. And this is where we get the idea of Father Time from Kronos. This is also where we get the Grim Reaper, or the Collector of Souls. And this is why when you see depictions of the Grim Reaper, he's always carrying around that scythe, just like Kronos. Now, in the Greek mythology, Kronos eventually has children. His children become the Olympians. And it's pretty much set in stone that one day his children will take over his throne.
Hades,
but
Poseidon,
Kronos
Zeus,
isn't willing to give up his throne. So much so that he actually eats his own children in order to protect his throne. And this leads to the war between the Titans and the Olympians. And Kronos is eventually defeated by his son, Zeus. This is how Zeus becomes king of the gods in Greek mythology. Despite there being so many Greek gods, and there's a lot, at least 600 plus, when you look back at that ancient Greco-Roman time period, it looks like there was no god that was worshipped more than Saturn. They had an entire festival dedicated to this god that lasted 6 days called Saturnalia. And during this
Roman pagan festival honoring the agricultural god Saturn. Oh, okay.
Well, they would drink and party, pretty much what the Greeks and the Romans did, but they would do this in the name of Saturn. They would give each other gifts, and they would decorate evergreen trees with ornaments of the moon, the sun, the stars, and they would take the branches of the evergreen tree and make wreaths
title
that they
of
would
the
hang on the
video.
doors of the houses and the temples. This has kind of led to people thinking that Christmas actually comes directly from Saturnalia, because they did all of this between December 17th and December 23rd. And pretty much every single Greco-Roman citizen was involved in this Saturnalia festival, even the slaves. And they say it was the one time of the year when the slaves weren't treated like slaves and they were allowed to freely participate in this event. Now, there might be a little twist to that, because every single Saturnalia would begin with a human sacrifice to the god Saturn.
Okay.
They actually had this huge structure built that they called the Temple of Saturn.
I like how he says huge, like Donald Trump does, where he says huge instead of huge. It'll be huge.
Still go to Italy today, and they say it's still standing in the same spot that it was thousands of years ago.
What accent
and right
is that?
there at the
that
base, right between the two main pillars, is where they say that they used to have this huge wooden statue of Saturn. And this is where they would kick off this whole Saturnalia festival by dedicating a human sacrifice to the god Saturn right there in that exact spot. And who knows what all else was going on. You got to remember, this history was written by the elite, the people that were in power during that time. So who knows what isn't being told and whatnot. But the Greco-Romans believed in something called the Golden Age. And this was a time in the past when the gods...
Is he about to start talking about the Kali Yuga? I'm gonna drink if he mentions the Kali Yuga by name. I'm gonna drink.
Saturn ruled over the entire world. And they believed that during this time that this god literally walked the earth. And the Greco-Romans credited Saturn with teaching them everything they knew, basically. When I was looking into the etymology of the word Saturn, I ran into something I found really interesting. It said Saturn was an ancient Italic deity popularly believed to have appeared in Italy in the reign of Janus, and to have instructed the people in agriculture, gardening, etc., thus elevating them from barbarism to social order and civilization. His reign was sung by the poets as the Golden Age. Now remember the barbarian tribes. That's the Greeks, the Romans, the Italics, the Vikings, the Slavics, all these groups of people being linked back to this one single lineage that anthropologists say comes from this mutated DNA, mysteriously showing up in Asia thousands of years ago. But the Greco-Romans believed that this god Saturn was responsible for putting them in the position that they were in, and they pretty much dedicated themselves to this god. And you definitely have to question, if this wasn't a being that they really saw and that they really knew existed, then why go through all this effort to appease this god to the point where you're literally sending up human sacrifices? Well, there is a theory that Saturn wasn't always a planet, that during ancient times our solar system had a different alignment, and that Saturn was actually our sun, which would have put Saturn a lot closer to the Earth than it is today. And it makes sense when you think about when this Saturnalia...
It makes sense. How does... Oh god. Oh fuck. Somebody without a fucking 5th grade level education made this fucking video. How... You know what? Before I fucking dunk on this man, I'm gonna let him finish his sentence.
Festival was held right around the winter solstice. You know, right around that time when it's thought that the sun is basically re-energizing and going through this rebirth. And a sun is a powerful object. I mean, it sustains life in so many ways. And Saturn is one of only 2 planets in our solar system, along with Jupiter, that's considered a gas giant, because the planet is composed of mostly hydrogen and helium. The two...
Okay. What's your point? Yeah, Saturn's a gas giant. Good job. You got a 4th grade vocabulary word. Now what?
2 main elements that you find inside of a star. Actually, the composition is so close to a star that sometimes they call these planets failed stars. And Saturn sometimes is considered a failed star. But if Saturn was closer to the Earth and was functioning as a sun at one point in time, then you got to get into the question of how did it go from a sun to a planet? How did that whole planetary alignment shift into what we have today? And then you still have to question what is going on with Saturn right now. You know, with what NASA has given us, with all these strange things happening with this vortex. And Saturn seemed to have this massive influence over the planet at one point in time. And even still today, it's just a lot less in your face. Every single Muslim, as long as they're physically able, is required to participate in something called the Hajj. And the Hajj is basically this pilgrimage that they have to make to this area in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, called the Kaaba. And they call this area the House of Allah. Now, Muslims believe that this area in Mecca was the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. and they believe that this is where he had his first revelation and dedicated this area to the one true God. But then they also say that the history of the Kaaba goes all the way back to the days of Abraham, nearly 2,000 years ago. And ultimately, they give credit to Abraham.
These boys just knock my door open?
Did they? I don't know if he's not back there, maybe. Unless he's in the bathroom.
As being the one who actually built the Kaaba and dedicating it to Allah or God. And the Kaaba itself is this black stone sitting in the middle of this structure. And the word Kaaba in Arabic actually literally translates to the word cube. And they go through all these rituals around this area to complete the Hajj, but everything begins at the Kaaba and everything ends at the Kaaba. And every single year you have millions of Muslims who come together on this one day to complete this pilgrimage. And during the first part of the Hajj, they have to walk counterclockwise around this cube 7 times. Then they have to walk back and forth between these 2 specific hills, the Safa and Marwa hills. And they got all this set up inside. So you basically walk between these 2 gates indoors. And they say that this is where Muhammad won this great battle and was able to conquer Mecca. They have to drink from the well of Zamzam. And they believe that the water from this well is actually holy water that God sent down directly to Abraham. They have to travel up Mount Arafat, where they say that Muhammad gave his final sermon, and they have to join in this mass prayer. They have to gather 49 stones and perform this thing called the stoning of the devil, where they throw the stones at 1 of 3 walls, and it's basically like a reenactment of Abraham resisting the temptation of the devil by throwing stones at him. And the Hajj ends with the festival of sacrifice, which is literally an animal sacrifice. And they say it's supposed to symbolize the animal sacrifice that Abraham gave up to God in exchange for Ishmael's life. And at the end of all this, they travel back to the Kaaba in Mecca, and they circle around the Kaaba cube one last time to close out the Hajj. Now, like I said, millions of Muslims come down to Mecca to participate in this. And over the years, they've had to change things to make it safer for people, because there's been so many deaths due to accidents during this pilgrimage. They actually had to completely change the stoning of the devil. At one point, they had this one pillar in a specific spot in Mecca, and everybody was required to throw stones at this pillar at once. But as you can probably imagine, a lot of people were getting struck with stones accidentally and getting either seriously hurt or, even worse, getting killed. So the Saudi government stepped in and they changed it to these 3 large walls that everybody would throw the stones at, and positioned them in a way where nobody would accidentally get hit. But even the walk around the Kaaba cube itself has been a huge issue. There has been thousands of deaths due to this thing being so crowded. Just in 2015, over 2,000 people got killed in the stampede during the Hajj.
Damn.
And the Saudi government, you know, they talked about widening the hallways and making more room for people and things like that, but it still remains a problem. Even with the animal sacrifices, it began to become too much, because you had millions of animals being slaughtered all in one day. So now they made it to where you can actually buy a voucher, and then the government will slaughter your animal for you. But again, you still have an animal being slaughtered. It's crazy. Now, all this craziness aside, when you really take a look at this walk around the Kaaba and you look at it above ground in an overhead view, this is where things get really weird, because it looks almost identical to this vortex on the northern and southern hemispheres of Saturn. I mean, you can post them up side by side and the resemblance is eerie. Even the direction that the vortex is going in that counterclockwise motion, you get that same exact counterclockwise
the
motion
circle is
around the Kaaba.
not.
It literally looks like you have millions of people down in
Making
Mecca
a hexagon.
reenacting the activity of this vortex on Saturn. I mean, if it's just a coincidence, it's a big one. Then you got to look at the fact that the timelines just don't really add up. Remember, they say they got the first shot of that hexagon on Saturn in 1981. And it wasn't until 2006 that they realized that it was even rotating. This is what they say. And then you have the Hajj, which has been going on way before that. You got Muslims claiming it goes all the way back to the days of Abraham. But we definitely know they were practicing this well before 1981. So the time just isn't lining up. And then you have the Kaaba itself, the actual cube that everybody walks around.
Okay.
There's some things there to
Tell
make
me
you
about
scratch your
the
head.
cube.
Remember, the word Kaaba literally means cube in Arabic. Well, we have a cube in the middle of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, and then we have this hexagon on Saturn. And normally, a hexagon is going to look like what we see on Saturn. But when you get into geometry, a hexagon can actually be any shape with 6 sides that are equal in measurement. And
No, it has to be a 2-dimensional shape with 6 sides, buddy. You can't use geometry to, like, justify your crazy Arab Saturn conspiracy and then not use the actual definition of the geometric terms you're given. Hi, Polly. Welcome to the stream. We're learning. So this is just so you're aware, we're like 20 seconds away from the end of the first part of a 20 something part fucking, it goes to part 10, but then part 10 breaks up into 6 sections. And I don't know what the fuck is going on.
A cube
we're learning about
can actually be looked
Saturn
at as the 3-dimensional form of a hexagon when it's converted from its normal 2-dimensional flat shape. Because with a cube you have a hexagon, and because of this,
hexagon is
going to look like
God,
what we see
I'm
on
fucking
Saturn.
God.
But when you get into geometry, a hexagon can actually be any shape with 6 sides that are equal in measurement. And because of this, a cube can actually be looked at as the 3-dimensional form of a hexagon when it's converted from its normal 2-dimensional flat shape. Because with
all right, okay, he was right. Okay, I'll drink. He got me. Okay, the new rule is he drinks anytime I get got. Because I told him that he was wrong about the cube, but he was right. A hexagon can be a cube. He's right.
With a cube, you have a shape with 6 sides, and all 6 sides are equal in measurement. So literally, a cube is just a hexagon in its 3rd-dimensional form. And again, you've got millions of people going around this Kaaba.
And here's the thing. Richard C. Hoagland says that the hexagonal spin at the top of Saturn represents the 4th-dimensional torsion field created by that shape. So, like, the 2nd-dimensional shape of the hexagon represents the 3-dimensional shape of the cube, right? But the 3-dimensional shape of the cube can represent the 4-dimensional shape of the torsion hexagon.
In the exact same motion as this hexagonal vortex on Saturn.
Ooh. Okay, part 2.
Saturn. In Judaism, in order to be considered orthodox,
it just keeps
or
going.
Somebody that's considered to be practicing
they
Judaism,
pick up exactly where they leave off. There's no stop. There's no fucking breaks on the Saturn time matrix black cube train. All right, that's what we're in for.
Required to wear this thing called the tefillin, and the tefillin is this cube-shaped black box that they wear on their arm and on their head. They insert verses from the Torah inside this black box. And then they take one part of the tefillin that has these tassels attached to it, and then they're required to wrap it around their arm exactly 7 times. And it goes on whichever arm is opposite your dominant arm. So
that's kind of like an edgy emo boy aesthetic. I'm kind of into that.
So if you're right-handed, you put it on your left arm, and if you're left-handed, you put it on your right arm. And then the second part of the tefillin is placed on top of the head. They say that placing the tefillin on the arm,
like, imagine you're an edgy anime boy and you've got your fucking headgear,
and placing it on the head
that goes
symbolizes
all the way
complete
out
commitment
and down
of the
your
mind.
arm.
And it's actually a part of the Judaic law that the tefillin has to be in the form of a cube. Otherwise, it's not considered a true tefillin. And they say that the practice of wearing this tefillin goes all the way back to the days of Moses. They believe it was a direct commandment from God after he brought the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt.
Cool and
they point to a lot of different verses in the Torah where they say that God commanded them to start doing this. In the King James Bible, they usually point to Deuteronomy chapter 6. And they believe that in ancient times, all the followers of the Judaic God wore a tefillin every single day, 24 hours a day, to symbolize their complete commitment to this God. Now you fast forward to today, and they kind of toned it down to where now they're required to put the Teflon on every morning during their morning prayer, but they're still required to wear the Teflon every single day.
I gotta say that it looks pretty cool. Like, okay, like, let me move this for you, but look at that guy in the back. Like, he's getting it, you know? That's a look. That's fashion right there. You know? That's fashion.
It's already peculiar enough that these people are wearing a black cube on their arm and on their head that looks quite a lot like
The
the
cube isn't
Kaaba
on their arm.
cube that Muslims walk around during the Hajj. But then you have to think about the fact that they have to wrap the tassels around their arms 7 times, just like Muslims have to make that rotation around the Kaaba 7 times. And then you got both the Bible and the Quran
7.
really pushing the Sabbath. And then both of these religions are coming out of the Middle East. Turkey is...
Do you not understand how, like, these religions started? Like, do more people not understand that Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are literally just like patch notes 1, 2, and 3 on the same religion? Like, what? I don't get how people don't understand this. Like, Judaism is like version 1.0. And the whole thing about Judaism is they're waiting for the Messiah. So then Jesus comes out, you get the New Testament, you get the Old Testament, which is just the Torah, and you get the New Testament, which is saying, hey, it's a bunch of Jews that believed, hey, the Messiah's here, we're good. And now you have Christianity. And then later, they believe, like, oh, that was the last prophet, we're done. But now you have Islam who comes out and is like, actually, a hexagonal cube is called something else and not a hexagon. No, a 3D hexagon is called a hexagonal prism, right? Like, let me check. Because anytime you make a shape... Oh no, that makes it... Shit. What's the shape that has a hexagon on every side? It's the shape of a... Wait, no, you can't. You can't have a hexagon on every side of a shape, right? Because that's not a platonic solid. No, the hexagon... A 3D hexagon is not a platonic solid. So you can't have that. It comes up if I just do 3D hexagon. Yeah, just like a bunch of weird shit. Yeah, see? That's not a hexagon. Those are triangles. But then, okay, back to my point. Yeah, here you go. See, you need a different shape on each side to connect the hexagons. Truncated octahedron. Thank you. Thank you, Quora. The new Google Yahoo Answers. But no, my point is that, like, Islam is like the 3rd installment in the Judaism trilogy, you know? They have the same God, they have the same mythos, they have the same backstory. They just, you know, they've got some different thoughts on certain things. And that's as in-depth about that as I'm gonna get.
Saudi Arabia, and you have all this cube symbolism. I mean, there's even more connections to be made through geometry, even with the Christian cross or the crucifix. When you look at that traditional form of the cross that we're so accustomed to seeing, if you take that cross laid out flat in 2D and you begin to fold it, at the end you're going to end up with a cube, because the cross can be perfectly divided
Oh
into
my
6 sides.
god,
And when you
everything
fold those 6
becomes a
sides into a three-dimensional form,
cube.
you get a cube. And so looking at the reverse side of that, a cube, when it's unfolded and broken down to a 2D form,
Jesus
becomes a
Christ.
cross. So a cross is another form of a cube. And then what's
Jesus
wild is
was
that
a
if you look at the
cube.
symbol that's used to represent Saturn in astrology, you can see it. You have the cross with the scythe coming out of it. Now, granted, a couple of the other planets do have
Oh
a cross,
my
but Saturn is the only one besides
God.
the Earth that has that traditional form.
Okay, this is something that I absolutely love, like with my whole heart, about crazy conspiracy nut jobs, is they can take any two things and find so many crazy fucking connections between them that they make you just go like, you're fucking right. Okay, sure. The symbol for Saturn has a cross. The cross can be turned into a cube. Saturn has a hexagon on it. The hexagon is the 2D representation of the 3D cube. You fucking got me. I can't disagree with anything you're saying right now. Therefore, everything else must be true.
The cross facing up. And in astrology, they say that the cross actually represents
I'm
basically
fucking
this third dimensional world that we live in.
stunned.
So everything that's made up of matter, everything that's physical, that cross represents in astrology.
Exactly,
And then you got the
Paulie.
scythe
That
coming out of the
exact
cross.
emoji
And remember
is
that
how
scythe
I
goes back to
feel.
Chronos, or the Greek god Saturn. So it's like it's alluding to a connection between the physical world and the god Saturn.
But the
almost like
other
it's hinting
thing-
that there's a connection between the two.
No, I'm not going to get into
Even
that.
the Star of
That's
David
dumb.
that you see on the flag of Israel, and that's considered
Can the
like one of the
Star of
most
David
important
turn into a
symbols
cube?
of
Are you going to
Judaism
show me
is
a
hexagram.
3D graphic of the Star of David folding into a cube somehow? Because I don't see how it could happen. I see that it has a hexagon. I get that. But, like, are you going to show me how it turns into a cube?
And a hexagram is a 6-pointed star that is literally just the outline
Oh
of a
my
hexagon.
God.
Those 6 points on the hexagram perfectly align to give you a hexagon.
He is.
And then if you look even closer at the hexagram, right in the middle, you can actually see a fully formed hexagon. And then we know a hexagon is going to take you right back to a cube. And you can see this.
Honey. What? The only... I'm not gonna do this one. This one is not a gotcha. This one's fucking dumb.
Same shape of a hexagram
This one's
in the symbol for
fucking
the
dumb.
atom. And you know the atom is the most basic element that makes up this physical reality. It's
Oh
literally
my
what every physical thing is composed of. Everything is made up of
No,
atoms.
stop.
So just like the cross in astrology, the hexagram
Jesus
or the hexagon
Christ.
is being used to represent this physical reality, this material world, everything on a physical level. A lot of people over the years have pointed out what seems like all of this Saturn symbolism in mainstream media. For years, people have been pointing this stuff out. And when you look at a lot of these TV shows, movies, even just the commercials, there does seem to be this strong influence pointing back to Saturn. There's a lot of
People use cubes to represent things? Sounds like Illuminati to me.
hints that seem to point in that direction, especially when it comes to a lot of the movies. It seems like that's where it's the strongest. Once you have an idea of like all the symbolism that can be connected back
dare
to Saturn,
anyone
it's crazy how
use
this stuff
a cube.
just starts to like jump out at you. You have so many major companies who seem to have their logos, sometimes even the name of the products, the slogans that they're using to sell the products, so many things that seem to connect. And sometimes it seems really subtle,
Sure.
sometimes it seems like it's being put right in front of your face. But you can see bits and pieces of this symbolism all throughout mainstream media. And when you start looking into it, it's actually really surprising just how far a lot of this stuff stretches back. There is a long trail of this stuff stretching throughout the years. And like I said, in some cases, it's so subtle that if you didn't know what to look for, you wouldn't even know it was there. And then other times you can't miss it. But when you combine a lot of this stuff all together, it all seems to connect. And it's like we're getting it from all sides, so many different forms of media. And it almost seems like years ago, it was a lot more in your face.
I'm sorry, but like geometric shapes and platonic solids are some of the most fucking common pieces of anything that you can't fucking say that any use of a cube is this thing. You have to be a little bit more specific, buddy.
The symbolism was a lot less subtle and it was kind of just out there. Even in the music, Stevie Wonder wrote an entire song about Saturn all the way back in 1976. It was on his album Songs in the Key of Life. And the lyrics to the song are interesting, to say the least. It's a real mind trip. And he said he originally wrote it about his hometown. And then one of his producers convinced him to change the song from his hometown to Saturn. And whatever the case may be, whether he understood what he was putting out there or not, when you listen to the lyrics of this song, it comes off like he was trying to say something without actually saying it. And it's just another one of those things that makes you think all this stuff is connected in some way.
Really
and there is the
makes you
chance that all
think,
of this is just
doesn't it?
a really big
Just makes you
coincidence.
think.
That a lot of this stuff just so happens to seem to connect and lead back to Saturn. But again, if all of this is a coincidence, it's a huge coincidence. And looking at all this, it seems pretty safe to say there's definitely something that at the very least is worth paying attention to when it comes to this stuff dealing with Saturn and all of this media symbolism. Another odd thing to point out are these black cubes that you can find spread out throughout different parts of the world.
That is you being specific enough. Thank you.
You have these giant black cubes that are placed in all these different spots all over, from Australia to Europe, all the way to California. And they're all supposed to have been created by different people, independent artists, people who are not connected to each other at all.
Sure.
But somehow they all got inspired to sculpt these giant black cubes. And again, you can find these things all over the place.
It is a platonic
and when you
solid,
find them, they're usually going to be in these really odd locations. In the middle of a business district, randomly sitting in a suburban neighborhood, on the roof of a kids museum, just in these really awkward spots. And they're always large and they're always black. And it's crazy. You have people doing everyday normal things in these normal surroundings, these normal settings. And then right in the middle of all of that, you have one of these cubes completely out of place. And you can really get a feel of just how huge these things are when you see actual people walking next to these things. You can really get a sense of the scale. These things make an average human being.
I want to make one of these, but I want to make
and I can't even imagine the level
black.
of craftsmanship that it would have taken to construct just one of these things, and then to transport them
just
to
like
these
a Vanta
specific
black
spots.
cube.
It just seems very purpose driven. And the one in New York City is the one that really caught my eye. This one was made by another independent artist, but it was sculpted all the way back in 1966. And in the following year, 1967, it was given as a gift to the city of New York by an anonymous donor, just a random donation from an unknown person. This is the actual story behind this thing. And this was actually the very first permanent sculpture in New York City. So it was the very first sculpture to actually have a part of it built into the ground in New York City. And the city of New York takes a lot of pride in this thing. Like I said, it's been around since 1967. And as you can guess, over the years, it's gotten a little banged up here and there. And the city has put over $180,000 in renovations into this thing. And when it was represented to the public in 2016, it was this huge deal. They had this big presentation just for them reinstalling it into the ground. And all of the city officials came together and basically celebrated the renovation and return of this sculpture. Now, what's really interesting about this particular black cube, one, not only is it tilted to the side at the perfect angle to form a hexagon, this thing was constructed to where it's able to spin on its axis. And this is one of the big attractions for a lot of the people who come and visit this part of New York, is to come together as a group and spin this black cube around. And it does usually take more than one person to spin this thing because of just how heavy it is. It's supposed to weigh somewhere around 1,800 pounds. So it usually takes at least a couple of people to get it moving. Now remember, this cube is tilted at the perfect angle to form a hexagon. So you have this cube / hexagon rotating around in a circle on its axis, really similar to the hexagon rotating on Saturn's North Pole. And just like the Kaaba, the dates don't line up. This cube was sculpted in 1966. And again, from what we're being told, there was no knowledge of that hexagon spinning on Saturn until 2006. So that's more odd stuff going on with the timeline. But yeah, this rotating hexagonal black cube has been sitting in the middle of New York for a long time. And the craziest part is you have little miniature versions of this same cube in other locations outside of New York. There's one in Southampton, Miami, Michigan, Ohio, Connecticut. You've got little miniature versions of this thing scattered across the country with the same exact design, a spinning black cube tilted perfectly to form a hexagon. And back in New York City,
you say perfectly,
not too far
but
from that
if you
spinning
put it
black
on
cube
any
is the
point,
United Nations headquarters, and it's open to the public. You're able to freely tour this building as long as you're over the age of.
I can say the United Nations in Arabic. El El Mutahida. I took Arabic for 3 years, and that's one of the only phrases I know how to say. El El Mutahida.
25, and inside the United Nations headquarters, they have a meditation room, and it's almost a completely empty room outside of some benches where you can sit, and abstract painting on the wall in the back of the room, and a black rectangular structure carved out of iron, dead center in the middle of the room. And like I said, people are able to freely come into the United Nations headquarters as tourists and enter this room and meditate. And this room has been a part of the headquarters since it was first built in 1952. And there's a light placed directly above the sculpture, and they say it's supposed to symbolize the light of the sun beaming down and giving life to everything on earth. But it's interesting because remember, in Hinduism, the god Shani is born directly under his father, the sun. And that's what ends up giving him that black hue. But they say that they specifically designed the room as an altar to the unknown god that's worshipped by many names. Because obviously the United Nations caters to every nation. Now, clearly, this sculpture is carved in the shape of a rectangle.
But
and
it's
when you
not
look
a
at that
cube.
rectangle through the lens of geometry, a rectangle in its third dimensional form is considered a cuboid because it has those 6 symmetrical sides, just like a cube, and all the angles in a cuboid are right angles. And so because of this, these shapes are placed into the same category as a cube. But once again, we have yet another black cubical object in what seems like another odd location. And this one's being used to symbolize all world religions. And this black cube symbolism seems to be integrated into everyday life, things that we do regularly without even thinking about it. You can see a form of that black cube symbolism with the graduation cap, because that graduation cap is usually black and it has that cube-like shape to it. So when you wear a graduation cap, it's like you're literally wearing a black cube on the top of your head. And when you look into the history of it, it goes all the way back to the Roman Catholic Church and something that they have been wearing for centuries called the Canterbury cap. They even refer to it as the square cap. And literally, when you look at it, it's a square cap, almost identical to the graduation cap. The only difference is the fabric that they use is a little bit softer and there's no tassel. But when you look at it, you can clearly see the roots of the graduation cap. And what's interesting to me is that the technical name for the graduation cap is the mortarboard. And the only other time you see that word mortarboard is when you're dealing with actual masons, people that build structures. They use a mortarboard to transfer the cement onto the bricks. And it is this square-shaped board, just like
Freemasons.
But
They
what a
did
coincidence
it
that
all.
they would use mason terminology to describe this
God.
black cube-shaped cap that you basically earn by moving up the ranks of society or the system. A system set up by people that seem to have this really strong connection to Saturn. So who or what is Saturn? Well, if you notice, there's a strong similarity between the word Saturn and the word Satan. And even though there's no concrete proof that the word Satan comes from the word Saturn, when you look back at how we originally got that popular depiction of Satan with the horns and the tail, that whole depiction of Satan was taken directly from the Greek god Pan. And Pan was a hybrid. He was one half human and one half goat. And you can see how he has the upper body of a human outside of the horns and the ears, and the lower body of a goat.
Of a human.
With the hindquarters, the tail, and everything. And Pan was considered the god of the wild. So like untamed, undomesticated nature. Also the god of rustic music and the god of lustful sex. There's a lot of
I should get a Pan statue in the house.
depictions of Pan that I can't even show here because it might get this video taken down. But you'll usually see these really sexualized depictions of Pan. And this is actually where we get the term pansexual. You know,
Yeah, Pan fucks.
somebody that's open to like all different types of sex with anybody and anything. That comes from the god Pan. And one of the really weird things about Pan is that he doesn't have an actual origin story. It's like he just kind of came out of nowhere. Some people say he was the son of Zeus, and then some people say he was the adopted brother of all the rest of the Olympians. Some people say that he's older than all of the Olympians. Either way, there's no true origin of Pan. But eventually the Roman Catholic Church took those characteristics of Pan and gave them to Satan. And this is where we got that half man, half goat depiction of Satan, which actually in some cases would be a full goat. Now going back into astrology, if you look at the symbol for Saturn in the zodiac, you can see it's the goat. Actually, it's the sea goat, which is one part goat and one part fish. So you have the symbolism there linking the goat to Saturn. And the explanation that they give for why they chose the goat is because when you look at that constellation, the outline of the stars forms something that looks similar to a goat's horn. And you can definitely see that outline in the pattern of the stars of this constellation. But what makes it seem like that goat horn was meant to represent something else is because of the way that Saturn is depicted in the tarot. Because literally Saturn is represented by the devil in the tarot. And if you look at it, you'll notice that you have the devil sitting on top of a black cube, and then you have two human beings, a male and a female, chained to that black cube, which is causing them to take on the features of the devil. And then the devil himself has that upside down pentagram on the top of his head. And remember, that pentagram represents the human body, the head, the two arms, and the two legs. And when it's flipped upside down, like you see it here, it's basically talking about matter being placed over mind. So a human being operating completely from their lower nature, completely from their animalistic, basic instincts. And remember, that's exactly what that god Pan is about, that untamed animalistic nature, giving fully into your lower nature, and basically giving fully into the material world without any type of self-discipline or higher thought, which all come from the mind. So again, matter over mind. And remember that symbol for Saturn in astrology with the cross, which can also be seen as a cube representing matter and the physical world, and then Saturn's scythe being attached to that cross. Well, you're basically getting the same thing here with human beings being chained to that black cube of the devil. Just right here, you have the devil replacing Saturn. Now you got to understand that in the Native American zodiac, Capricorn can be represented by either a snow goose or a whip.
The Native Americans have a zodiac?
Depending on which hemisphere of the earth you were born in. And it has nothing to do with the planets at all. There's no planets involved. And in the Chinese zodiac, Capricorn can be a number of different animals. It's all based on the year you were born. Again, no planets at all involved in that process. So whoever made this a thing in planetary astrology and in tarot with the goat and the devil leading back to Saturn, they were really trying to push this point home about the connection between Saturn and Satan.
Also, we had dicks on stream
Now,
again.
eventually, from this goat-like
Oh, we have
depiction
dicks
of
on
Satan,
stream again.
we would get the Baphomet. That
why do
image
I
used by the
always
Church
get
of
dicks
Satan
on
and other
stream?
people who deal in different forms of Satan.
Every
And there's a
fucking
history of this
stream
thing
we
that goes
get
all the way back
dicks.
to the Crusades. That medieval time period when you had the Knights Templar attempting to convert different nations over to Catholicism and Christianity. Well, what's crazy is that as a part of that history, the Knights Templar were actually accused of worshiping the Baphomet. And after being interrogated, you actually had a few of them confess to it. Now, the thing is that one of the methods that they used as a part of that interrogation was torture. And let's be real, under that type of punishment, people will confess to a lot of different things, including things that they've never done. Either way, the history of the accusations are there. But it's also said that there's a chance that the name Baphomet was actually another name for Muhammad and that they were secretly practicing Islam. But despite all that history, there was no known depictions of the Baphomet until 1856, when this writer, Eliphas Levi, wrote a book called The Dogma and Rituals of High Magic. And in that book, we got the first known image of the Baphomet, the same image that we're familiar with today, the half man, half goat, half male, half female Baphomet. But what's interesting is how he referred to the Baphomet in the book, because if you look at it, he referred to the Baphomet as the sabbatic goat. And that word sabbatic is used to refer to something that's connected to the Sabbath. And remember, the Sabbath is dealing with Saturday, which ultimately takes you back to Saturn. Now, the occult explanation for the Baphomet
This is
that it's supposed to
literally
symbolize this perfect
my
balance
fucking
between two
meme
complete
of the
opposites.
crazy
So, like,
conspiracy fucking pinboard that just like everything connects and lines up and is insane. Okay, I'm gonna let this play. I'm gonna go pee. I can still hear it.
good
I'll
and
commentate
evil,
when I get
masculine
back.
and feminine, light and dark, negative and positive, those opposite energies that you find inside human beings. And when you master those two polar opposites and you're able to bring them together in a perfect balance, this is what leads a person to becoming enlightened or illuminated, which is why you see the torch sprouting out of the top of the head. Then you have the wings and the two intertwined snakes, which was taken from the Greek god Hermes, because the symbol for Hermes is the caduceus, the rod with the two wings and the two intertwined snakes. And you see this symbol used in the medical field a lot, but it actually goes back to this Greek god. And in mythology, Hermes was looked at basically like a messenger god. He was like a middleman between the gods and mortals, and he would convey messages back and forth between the different realms. So it's being used here as a way of saying that the symbol of the Baphomet contains some type of divine knowledge. Now, the reason for the goat symbology or the pan symbology is to symbolize the belief of a need for evil, that evil is actually a necessary component of existence, that basically we need evil to understand good, because if you didn't have evil, you'd have nothing to compare good to. So the idea is that evil is a necessary component in order for us to understand reality as we know it in full detail. Just like you need a negative and a positive charge to create an energetic spark in something. It's pretty much that same concept, that you need both the negative and the positive in order to experience full existence. And clearly, with that image of Pan, the focus with the Baphomet is on bringing in that lower energy, that negative animalistic energy into this reality. Now, there's a statue of George Washington, one of the founding fathers, that was created in 1840. And it used to sit right in the middle of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. And originally it was supposed to stay in the Capitol. But there was so much controversy over this statue, mainly because it depicted George Washington without a shirt, which was a huge issue during that time, that in 1908, it got moved indoors, first to the Smithsonian Museum. Now it's in the National Museum of American History, but they say it was supposed to be based on a statue of the Greek god Zeus that was destroyed during late antiquity. And it's supposed to symbolize
can't
George
have
Washington
shirtless
turning over
George
the power to
Washington.
the American citizens after
That's
the American Revolutionary War.
scandalous.
But when you really look at this sculpture, it looks a lot like
Oops,
one of the
I
founding
accidentally
fathers, George
fucking
Washington,
smashed
sculpted
right
in the
into my
same exact
desk.
pose as the Baphomet. You put them up
That's
side by
true.
side and they're nearly
That's
identical.
true.
They're
He
both
is-
seated with that
he
same
is
posture,
doing
and the
the
hand
as
gestures are
above,
really
so
similar. Not to
below
mention that
hand
you have George
gesture.
Washington depicted with his shirt off, which again, when that statue was presented to the public in 1840, that was one of
George
the big issues
Washington
that people
kinda
had with
thick,
it.
though.
Why is the president of the United States half naked on this statue? Well, if you compare him to the Baphomet, which
Because he's wearing Greco-Roman style robes. What do you...
is also shirtless, and then them both having nothing but that cloth covering them up, it seems like there might be a connection.
Just
And remember,
kill
again,
me.
this statue of George Washington was built in 1840, and we didn't get that first official depiction of the Baphomet until 1856. So then you got to ask, which came first, the sculpture of George Washington or the Baphomet?
God.
Either way, there's clearly a strong similarity between
Okay.
these two images. Now you got to keep in mind that George Washington was a well-known Freemason, and eventually down the
And
line,
now
we got
here
this
he
French
is
writer
on top
named
of
Leo
a
Tacqueville,
black cube.
who started up this huge campaign
Jesus
against the
Christ.
Freemasons. And one of his main claims was that the Freemasons were worshiping the devil in the lodges,
Okay.
and that they were specifically worshiping the Baphomet. He put out a bunch of anti-Mason material, and this lasted all the way from the early 1890s all the way to 1897. And it was extremely controversial. He was getting a lot of backlash from Freemasons. until one day, all of a sudden in 1897, he comes out and says that it was all a hoax, that he pretty much lied about everything, and that it was some sort of like social experiment to see how many Catholics he could get to believe this story, because
Why have
apparently
I
he
never
was
heard
extremely
this?
anti-Catholic, and he used these fanatical stories about the Freemasons just to see if the Catholics would actually buy into it. And eventually this whole thing would go on to be known as the Taxel hoax. Now, if that's not crazy enough, around this same time period, you had this English occultist named Aleister Crowley start this
Of
organization
course,
called the
here we
Order of the
go.
Temple of the East. And from this organization,
Here we
he
get
ended up
into
forming his
Crowley.
own religion called Thelema. And this man, Aleister Crowley, went on to be known as the wickedest man in the world. He actually
Yep.
went out of his way to dive into all types of dark and evil stuff. And he actually named himself the Great Beast 666. And eventually he went on to refer to himself as the Baphomet. And his main motto in all his teachings was do what thou wilt. So basically having no boundaries, no discipline, no self-control, pretty much embodying those characteristics of the god Pan. He was actually kicked out of Italy and banned by the Italian government because of some of the sick stuff that he was rumored to be doing in this house in France that he had turned into a cult. And because some of the more upper class people in that part of Europe were also starting to be rumored to be followers of Aleister Crowley. And this eventually led to him becoming one of the most widely known occultists in the world. Now, the symbol for this religion that he created, the Lema,
Dun dun dun. If you untwist it, it becomes a cube.
is actually a unique form of a hexagram called a unicursal hexagram. Now, with a regular hexagram, you have two triangles that overlap each other to create that hexagram. But a unicursal hexagram is a hexagram that's created in one continuous motion, one continuous line. So geometrically, it could actually be seen as like the perfect form of the hexagram. And usually when you see it, it's gonna have a flower in the center. And the 5 petals on that flower is supposed to represent the 5 points on the 5-pointed star. But
But all
it's
right,
crazy
keep
because this
going.
unicursal hexagram is actually extremely similar to another symbol in the practice of magic called the sigil of Saturn, or the seal of Saturn. I mean, they look nearly identical when you put them side by side. And this seal is supposed to be created from what they call the magic square of Saturn. And it's every number from 1 through 9 aligned in perfect horizontal and diagonal rows to form a square. And the actual symbol itself is created by tracing out each one of these numbers in this square in exact order from 1 to 9. And from that outline, you get the seal of Saturn, or the sigil of Saturn. Now, in magic, the planet Saturn is associated with time, containment, death, and stagnation. So a lot of negative energy. Now, remember, time is taking us back to Kronos because he was considered the god of time. Remember, Father Time, counting down and only giving you so much time. And then you have death, which takes you back to the Grim Reaper, carrying around that scythe and waiting for your time to run out. And again, the Grim Reaper is directly
Magic
connected to Kronos or Saturn.
squares.
And then you have containment and stagnation. And with those two, just think about the devil and
My
human beings being
brain.
chained to that black cube of the devil. And again, the devil points you right back to
Just
Saturn.
filling
And
it
then
with
all of this
more
is contained in this square
conspiracy.
or cube. And it seems like we have the quote unquote wickedest man in the world. This guy calling himself the Beast and the Baphomet, doing all this low energy, low vibrational stuff. It seems like we have him creating an entire religion centered around tapping into the energies of Saturn. Now, there's a lot of debate out there about whether or not Aleister Crowley was a Freemason. And even though there's nothing official on record to prove that he was, there are a couple of images of him dressed in the Freemasonic attire. So it brings
Yeah,
in the
but,
question,
like,
was he connected to the Freemasons? And
wouldn't
what's crazy
he
is that if
just
you
do
take the
that?
official symbol for Freemasonry
Because he
with the
wants
compass
it?
overlapping the ruler, and you compare that symbol to the unicursal hexagram, they look really similar. The compass is laid over the ruler at the perfect angle
Dun,
to give you
dun,
those same 6 points that you see on the unicursal hexagram. You've got the 2 adjacent points to the left and the right, and then you've got those 2 triangular points at the top and the bottom, exactly
my
like that unicursal hexagram. It's giving you the same angles, the same points. And if you put the symbol for Freemasonry side by side with the sigil of Saturn, again, there is a similarity because, of course, you've got a lot of those same angles that you see in the unicursal hexagram in the sigil of Saturn. So again, it brings up the question, how much of a connection did Aleister Crowley have to Freemasonry? Now, if we rewind back a little bit to the mid 1800s, we end up running into this guy named Albert Pike, probably one of the most influential Freemasons in history. He was the Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite body of Freemasonry for 32 years. He was a high-ranking 33rd degree Mason, and he was basically responsible for
he's the
developing the
fancy
framework
Mason.
of that organization. This guy was a really influential Freemason, so much so that after he passed away in 1891,
There's 33 degrees in Masonry. After you've hit the 33rd degree, allegedly it circles back, and that becomes like, now you're allowed to learn the real Freemasonry. And basically you have to do it all again, but there's like new thing. It's like New Game Plus. It's Freemasonry New Game Plus. After you've hit 33rd degree, you stay officially at the 33rd degree, but then they start teaching you like the real Freemasonry.
A half a century later, they built a museum in his honor in the Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C., and then they moved his remains into that temple. In 1901, they built a memorial statue in his honor and placed it in the middle of the Judiciary Square in Washington, D.C. And over the years, this statue has created a lot of controversy. It's led to a lot of protests and people calling for the statue to be taken down. One reason being because before Albert Pike became a Freemason, he was a Confederate general in the Civil War, fighting for the right to continue to own slaves. And there's people out there that actually suspect that he was one of the founding members of the Ku Klux Klan because over his lifetime, he's made a lot of racist remarks towards black people. And also, when you look at the infrastructure of the Ku Klux Klan, that organization is set up very similar to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry with the ranks and the degrees. Now, despite all the protests and calls for action to get this statue taken down, the federal government has refused to do anything. And it's crazy because Albert Pike is literally the only Confederate military officer with an outdoor statue in Washington, D.C. So it just kind of shows you just how powerful this man's influence was. Now, in 1871, he wrote a book called Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. And he went into a lot of stuff in the book. It's kind of heavy reading. It's a little bit all over the place. Pretty much what you would expect from Freemasonic material. But when you read it and you get to page 5 of the book, he starts talking about the ashlars. And an ashlar is a square stone that's used in masonry. That's used to finish off the walls of...
Sorry. I wonder what shit has been leaked from Freemasonry officially, like on purpose, and what shit has been leaked from Freemasonry on accident. That's
brick and mortar structures. And right here he compares the ashlars to actual people. It says, "You will hear shortly of the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar as part of the jewels of the lodge. The rough ashlar is said to be a stone as taken from the quarry in its rude and natural state. The perfect ashlar is said to be a stone made ready by the hands of the workmen, to be adjusted by the working tools of the fellow craft. The rough ashlar is the people as a mass, rude and unorganized. The perfect ashlar, or cubical stone, symbol of perfection, is the state. The rulers deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. The Constitution and the laws speaking the will of the people. The government harmonious, symmetrical, efficient, its powers properly distributed, and duly adjusted in equilibrium. If we delineate a cube on a plane surface thus, we have visible 3 faces and 9 external lines, drawn between 7 points. The complete cube has 3 more faces, making 6, 3 more lines, making 12, and 1 point, making 8, while its own 2 figures, 1, 2, added together, make the sacred number 3. It was called the perfect number, and the cube became the symbol of perfection. So he's basically saying that the citizens, the majority of the people on the planet, are unorganized, unrefined, not balanced, a little uneven, just like one of those ashlar bricks that just doesn't quite form a perfect square, has those jagged edges to it, it's just kind of rough. He's saying the people are a rough ashlar. And then on the other end, the state or the government represents the perfect ashlar, a perfect cube that's formed when the state has that ultimate power or ultimate control over the people, with the people agreeing to give them that power, which is adjusted by the working tools of the fellow craft, so basically controlled by the Freemasons. And if you look at the illustration of that cube being delineated, which delineate just means the way that it's being shown, with it being shown at that specific angle to give you those 3 faces, 3 lines, the 6 points on each side with that 1 extra point in the middle. And then if you turn that cube around, you'd have the exact same thing on the opposite side. And all of that coming together to give you those exact sacred numbers and create the perfect ashlar. You can see that when a cube is laid out that way, what you get is a hexagon. So he's basically saying that the perfect form of the cube and the perfect symbol of government control is the hexagon. And then a little bit further up in the book on page 63, he talks about the idea of a deity or a god and how God would be defined from a Masonic standpoint. He says, the most abstract expression for deity, which language can supply, is but a sign or symbol for an object beyond our comprehension, and not more truthful and adequate than the images of Osiris and Vishnu, or their names, except as being less sensuous and explicit. We avoid sensuousness only by resorting to simple negation. We come at last to define spirit by saying that it is not matter. Spirit
yes, Drunk Zeppelin, we are learning about... We're learning about Saturn, the cube, the time matrix, the black cube gods. We're learning about geometry. We're learning about Freemasonry. I don't know what the fuck is going on. You're just coming in now, but I'm like almost 40 minutes into this shit. And no, there's no math, it's just shapes. And we've learned so much. We're on Freemasonry right now. We'll get back to the geometry.
Is spirit. So he's saying the concept of a deity or a
I'm
god
hungry. I want
is
some
defined by
ramen.
negation. Now remember, Freemasons allow every god from every religion in the lodge. As long as you believe in a supreme being, you've met the first requirement of Freemasonry. So basically, instead of separating these gods with different names and labels, they simplify it and explain what God is by giving you the opposite of what God is. So just like you've got the example there of spirit and how they explain what spirit is by saying it is not matter, just pointing out its exact opposite or its negation. So if we go from there to page 102, in this part of the book, he starts delving into Satan and exactly who and what Satan is. It says, the true name of Satan, the Kabbalists say, is that of Yahweh reversed. For Satan is not a black god, but the negation of God. The devil is the personification of atheism or idolatry. For
Oh,
the
so
initiates,
Reddit
this is not a
atheists
person.
are literally Satan. Got it. Understood. Heard. For sure. I believe it. I believe that. Those people are so fucking annoying.
Force, created for good, but which may serve for evil. It is the instrument of liberty or free will. They represent this force, which presides over the physical generation under the mythological or horned form of the god Pan. Thence came the he-goat of the Sabbat, brother of the ancient serpent, and the light bearer, or phosphor, of which the poets have made the false Lucifer of the legend. So he brings up the devil, Pan, the he-goat of the Sabbat, so the Baphomet, the ancient serpent, Lucifer, all of these names that are being used to describe the same negative, low vibrational force, and that all ultimately point you back to Satan. And he's saying for the initiates, so for the people that practice Freemasonry, Satan is not an actual living, breathing person, but a force. So an energy that was created for good, but can serve for evil. So that goes back to that idea of the Baphomet, that we need both positive and negative energy to experience existence to the fullest. And the Baphomet basically representing bringing in that negative or evil energy onto the planet to the fullest extent. And he's saying that this force of Satan is represented by our free will, basically our ability to do whatever we want to do. Remember Aleister Crowley basing that whole Thelema religion around Satan, the Baphomet, the beast 666, and his main motto surrounding all of that being do what thou wilt. So basically not putting any boundaries on your free will, or if you look at it here, giving fully into Satan. And he says that this force presides over the physical generation.
When do we
so basically
get
that
off
Satan
this?
is the ruler of this physical world. And again, we've seen that illustrated with human beings being chained to that black cube of the devil. And you have to wonder, when he says they represent this force, is he talking about the initiates or the followers of Freemasonry? Because there are odd things like that statue of George Washington, one of the founding fathers and a prominent Freemason, depicted in nearly almost the exact same pose as the Baphomet.
And
then he says that Satan is not a black
scandalous.
god, but the negation of God. So basically that Satan is the exact opposite of God. And in that line, Satan is not a black god. He's also giving you the negation of Satan, or the exact opposite of Satan, and saying that that exact opposite is a black god. Now, remember everything that Satan represents, which is giving completely into the physical world without any boundaries, and basically allowing your matter to take over your mind, letting that lower nature take over completely. Well, right here, he's saying that a black god is the exact opposite of that, the exact opposite of giving into the physical. And this is the one and only time in the book when you see this term. Now, if we go back and take a second look at that astrological symbol for Capricornus, remember it's a hybrid, one part goat and one part fish. And we know what the goat can be connected to. But as far as that lower half, that fishtail, remember, one of the earliest religious symbols was the ichthys, which was literally a fish. And the name ichthys is actually the Greek word for fish. Sometimes it's actually referred to as the sign of the fish. And there's this whole mystery behind the origins of this thing. Nobody seems to know where it originally came from. But eventually, somewhere around the end of the first century, the early Christians adopted this symbol from somewhere and started to...
You know why they adopted the symbol? Because the way you spell it in fucking ancient Greek is a anagram for the name of Jesus. You didn't do enough research. If he says that at this video, I'll drink again.
Use it as a secret symbol to let other Christians know that they were also a Christian. Because, you know, during that time period, you had Christians that were being persecuted by the Roman Empire. So instead of coming out and admitting that they were a Christian in public and risk being killed, they would draw this fish symbol in the dirt or the sand and then quickly brush it away. And it was like an easy way to identify yourself as a Christian, because all you had to do was draw those two lines. And they took that Greek word for fish, ichthys, and used the letters of that word to secretly spell out Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. And they...
I gotta go grab another beer. He fucking did it. Well, you're back. You missed me taking a small break to grab a beer because I was mad because fucking Mr. Conspiracyman fucking called my bluff of him not saying that the word for fish in Greek was or Roman rather, was the fucking portmanteau for Christianity, as far as like using it to spell out Jesus Christ, God, Son, Savior stuff. Don't question my diction. Conspiracyman is a technical term. I have a PhD, Drunken Zeppelin. I have a PhD in this. You don't. We already had dicks on stream. God damn it. You missed dicks on stream.
Basically turned it into an acronym or a sort
I don't know
of
why
code
there's
word.
always
So whenever
dicks
one of them
on
would say the word
stream
fish,
at least
what
once,
they'd actually
though.
be saying was Jesus. And the symbol eventually started to catch on. And
God.
by the 4th century, it was widespread
Loud.
all over the place. Leading into today, where you see it in front of church buildings and on the back of people's cars. You pretty much see it everywhere now. But again, they say that the origin of this symbol is a mystery. The early Christians adopted it from somewhere, but they have no clue where this thing originally came from. But it seems like a recurring theme in all of these ancient texts
I have
that
to
the
drink
first
because you
physical
fucking
thing in
called my
existence is
bullshit.
always water. And then out of that water, we get the very first gods. It's something you constantly see in ancient mythology. And there's usually always a mother goddess of the water who births these gods. And some of the oldest written history that we know of comes out of
check on my
Mesopotamia
ramen in
or
like 2
the Middle
minutes.
East, Iraq, Iran, Syria, all around that region. And when you look into the ancient mythology of Mesopotamia,
Yeah, so like, it's partially because of the fish and bread miracle. It's partially because the Latin word for fish can be broken into an anagram for Jesus Christ's name. It's a lot of different things. It's basically a meme that evolved in the Roman era. So, humans have been memeing forever.
you're going to come across these beings called the Apkallu. And the Apkallu are these 7 demigods. So basically the offspring of the gods. And in the mythology, after the first human beings are placed on the earth, they kind of have a hard time understanding what the gods want them to do and how to do what they want them to do.
Well, I mean, when you take it out of its modern context, the term meme just means like small, easily transmittable piece of information. So yeah, basically.
So the gods send the Apkallu to teach human beings everything. How to read, how to write, how to farm, science, mathematics, everything. And also to teach them about the gods and how the gods created the world. And in exchange, human beings give up sacrifices and do tasks for the gods. And when the Apkallu come to the earth, they come from out of the ocean. They literally walk out of the ocean onto dry land. And the very first group of Apkallu that come to the earth are these human men wearing the carcass of a fish. They're literally described as human beings who have the carcass of a fish draped over the top of them, wearing these fish, almost like a cloak, with the fish head covering the top of their head and the rest of the fish draped over their back, wearing these fish just like somebody would wear a robe. And they were looked at as the teachers of mankind, these wise men.
So you see how my point is that he just takes tangent to tangent to tangent to tangent to tangent to tangent, and he just fucking runs with it. Like, we've gone from Saturn to cubes to Islam to Judaism to cubes to fucking it's I think my ramen is happening. One sec.
Or sages, and more Apkallu would keep showing up. And based off of the mythology, these Apkallu are the ones who taught the people in each one of the ancient civilizations from the past. And there's artifacts all over different parts of the Middle East depicting the Apkallu. From Iran to Lebanon, Syria, there's artifacts all over Western Asia. A lot of times they'll be in these ancient abandoned cities that are pretty much nothing but ruins. And in the middle of all of that, you'll have one of these Apkallu artifacts that survived all the destruction to the city still standing. But you also have the artifacts that have been excavated and moved to different museums in places like Germany and England, usually in different parts of Europe. And sometimes you'll see the Apkallu depicted in large groups. Sometimes they'll be surrounding what looks like a king or a priest, covering them in water, almost like they're passing on that knowledge, just like in the mythology. Then other times they're depicted by themselves. But they're almost always portrayed as these human men with long beards wearing these fish from head to toe almost. almost completely wrapped in this fish skin. They almost look like mermaids or mermen with that half man, half fish appearance. But it's a little bit more realistic because you've got an actual human being wearing the skin of a fish. And they might be holding some type of sacred object like a sickle or a pine cone, things that symbolize authority, wisdom, long life. And they say that in Mesopotamia, people would actually take the small figurines of the Apkallu and bury them underneath the foundations of buildings. That's where they found a lot of them when they excavated, because people thought that these images of the Apkallu would protect them from evil spirits. And they'd usually set them out in sets of 7, because when the Apkallu showed up, they showed up in a group of 7. And in the mythology, after teaching mankind, the Apkallu stay on the earth for a long time before finally descending back into the water. In one of the myths, one of the Apkallu actually ascends up to heaven. But eventually, according to the myth, they all leave the earth. But they left what looks like this major impact on that ancient Mesopotamian culture with all these artifacts and all this mythology. Now, if we take a look at the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope, cardinals, and bishops wear something called a mitre. And there is some conflict on the origins of the mitre and what it's actually supposed to mean. There's no official explanation as to why they wear it. Different sectors of the church have their own individual meanings that they've given to it. But the most widely accepted explanation is that it was pulled directly from Acts chapter 2 in the Bible. Because in that chapter, the disciples are all gathered together in one house on the day of Pentecost.
You thought
and the Holy
Christianity
Spirit
evolved
enters
its
the
own
room there,
concepts?
and everybody in the room
Wrong.
is filled with the
It
Holy
was
Ghost.
fish
And
people.
they all start to speak in tongues. And people who are outside of the house are able to hear this. And everybody who hears them speak in tongues are able to understand what they're saying.
I need the fucking dude who does Aquafarians.
There's no such thing as a coincidence.
There's no
The
such
fact that
thing
you're
as a
watching this video
coincidence.
means you are energetically aligned with me and
And this
Aquafarians. But you may know them as mermaids. The truth is, the being with a humanoid torso and fish-like tail is only one type of aquafarian. In fact, there are many more advanced aquatic beings that come in all shapes and sizes. Remember, only 5% of the oceans on planet Earth
I
have been
love this
explored and
dude.
charted.
Have
One of
you
the
seen
biggest
this fucking
secrets
dude?
kept from Earth humans are the amounts of cities they have discovered underwater. They want you to believe every underwater city is the result of a flood or natural disaster. But the truth is, a lot of these cities are the remains of ancient underwater civilizations purposely built underwater by aquafarians. Either that, or one big coincidence.
Oh no, he keeps going in. Oh no, he's so scary. Oh my god. I fucking love this dude.
There is no such thing as a coincidence.
There's
The
no
fact that
such
you're watching
thing as
this
a
video
coincidence.
means you are energetically aligned with me.
Dude,
and
I'm
this
so
message.
energetically
Your
aligned with
thoughts
you.
create your reality. Well, you already knew that, yet you still live a life that you dread. That is because when you visualize your dream life, you unconsciously believe that it is unrealistic.
Fuck. But you still live a life that you dread. Ah! Oh, fuck. Okay. That's all I wanted. I need to bring him up, like, every fucking video now.
No matter what language they speak. And this is basically
He's
like the
so
moment when the
good.
disciples are given the power directly from God to preach to every nation, no matter what language. And when the Holy Spirit enters the room, it looks like 2 tongues of fire or 2 flames. And in the story, those flames come down and sit on each one of the disciples. And so the idea is that those 2 points
Jack
on the
Dorsey.
mitre represent the
Oh. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, fuck
and
Jack.
I'm-
He's a piece of shit. Ooh, ready to glare drama. We're gonna get into that later. maybe after our
those two
fucking
flames.
5-hour
Now again, this isn't the
fucking
official explanation. It's just the most
thing
widely
that we're
accepted.
doing right
and it makes
now.
sense because every single world leader, every president,
I
every
like Brady
dictator
Blair.
of every
She's
single
fun.
country all make a visit to the Vatican and meet with the Pope, no matter what language they speak, no matter what religion. Every single world leader visits the Vatican and meets with the Pope. So that symbology of having the power to reach every nation appointed by God makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you can see that playing out in plain sight.
I haven't.
But that's just one aspect. There does seem to be
But
another
there's
side
a
to
really
it.
good
If you take
documentary
the Pope
about him
wearing
that once
mitre
I find
and then
it,
take
I
that
will
image of
do
the
a stream
Alcalde
on.
and place them together side by side and make a
Because
comparison.
that story
the
is
mitre
insane.
looks almost identical to that fish head. That open top of the mitre basically looks like the mouth of a fish.
Yeah, that's
Even
what I
those two
said when I
tails
walked
hanging
back
down the
the
back
door.
of the mitre, they call them lappets. They look really similar to those scales or the body of that fish going down the back of the Alcalde. And even when you look into where the lappets, those two tails on the back, come from, again, the origins are apparently unknown. They have no clue where they originated from or what they mean. But the resemblance to the Alcalde is crazy. It's pretty hard to ignore. Now, when they wear the mitre, they usually wear it during ceremonial occasions. So
pretty
during
hard to
seasons
ignore.
like Advent,
I forgot
Lent,
to put soy
and
sauce
different
in
processions
this.
within the church. Now, in the
love putting
Vatican,
soy
in
sauce
Rome,
in my
which is
ramen.
essentially the headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church, it's worn on a lot of occasions, but specifically during Holy Mass, where they venerate the patron saints, which are these holy figures honored by the church and basically looked at as these intercessors of God, these middlemen that the church goes through to communicate with God.
Yeah, we
and of
know
course,
who
you've got
the
so many different
saints are.
forms of the patron saints all over the world. They look different depending on where you go, but inside of the Vatican in Rome, the depiction of the patron Saint Peter is black, a very dark black tone. And as one of the rituals of the Mass, the Pope, wearing the mitre along with the bishops, bows down to that statue of Saint Peter. And then the Pope and the Archbishop walk up and kiss the foot of Saint Peter. And this is at the very end of the Mass, by the way. This is what closes out the Mass. And this particular Mass is called the Feast of the Chair of St. Peter, obviously because that statue of St. Peter is sitting on that throne. And
They're
they
in New
dress the
Orleans.
statue in that robe and place that crown on the top of its head, specifically for this Mass. And again, there's quite a few patron saints, but the head church in the Vatican in Rome is actually named St. Peter's Basilica. The entire church is actually named after this patron saint. So that already kind of gives you an idea of just how important this figure is to the Roman Catholic Church. But also, every single pope is required
Yeah,
to
I
wear a
imagine
ring on their
Saint
finger. It's called the
Peter
ring
is
of the
pretty
fisherman.
fucking
And again,
important
every
to the
single pope
Roman
is
Catholic
required to wear this
Church.
ring. Every time a new pope is elected, they actually have one of these rings custom made for that particular pope. And the ring itself is engraved with an image of Saint Peter. And it's supposed to be taken directly from that verse in Mark 1:17.
I'm going down to New
where
Orleans
Jesus was speaking to
in
two of the disciples and he
November.
said, "Come with me
I'll check 'em
and be
out.
fishers of men." And so sometimes Saint Peter would actually be depicted as a fisherman on a boat on the ring. And they actually have an entire coronation ceremony where this ring is transferred over to the new pope. The head cardinal of the church presents the ring to the pope and then actually personally places it on his finger. And once the pope is given his ring, he passes down these lesser rings to all of the bishops. But that fisherman's ring remains the ultimate sign of authority. And if you notice on the
Oh,
ring,
it's
Saint
just
Peter
like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was a 9/11.
is depicted with a halo above his head.
Conspiracy
And with the robe and the crown
confirmed.
removed, you can see that that statue in the Vatican also has a permanent halo, literally a ring hovering over the head of this patron saint. Now remember, this is all located in Rome, controlled by the Roman Catholic Church. And remember, also in Rome, we had the Roman Empire.
Okay,
And
but are the words ring and halo in Latin connected? If not, then I don't care.
empire that seemed to be obsessed with this god Saturn.
Watch him call
with
me out on that
Saturnalia
fucking bullshit,
and
too.
all the Greek mythology, literally dedicating an entire festival to this god. They seem to be closely tied to this god, Saturn. And of course, we know Saturn is the one planet in our solar system with the largest visible halo circling around it. So you gotta wonder, is this patron saint depiction of Saint Peter
Oh,
just
I'm
a
ready.
continuation of that ancient
I'm
Roman
excited.
worship of Saturn? And you got
My
so much
boyfriend and I are
symbolism with
going
the
for
Ichthys,
his mom's
the mitre,
birthday,
the fisherman's ring,
and then we're gonna
we've
get
seen the image of
engaged
China,
there.
and now Saint Peter, and clearly they're both black. And if we go back and look at that term used for those ancient Mesopotamian deities, Apkallu, after that first set of Apkallu emerges from the water and come onto the earth, more Apkallu start to show up. And they come in the form of birds, human beings with wings. But the very first Apkallu to step foot on the earth are those half man, half fish. And the term
Yeah, it's gonna be
Apkallu
good. It's
can
gonna
actually
be
be
nice.
broken down
Thank
into
you.
a compound, into two words, into the word Ap and into the word Kalu. And in Sanskrit, which is an ancient Indian language that is supposed to go back at least 4,000 years, the word Ap translates to the word water. Ap literally means water in Sanskrit. And keep in mind that this is coming out of that same South Asian region as Mesopotamia. And in Hindi, which is the official language in India, the term Kali means black. And you can actually see this with the Hindu goddess Kali, because her name literally translates
black people
to she
came
who is
out of
black. in
The
Sanskrit.
ocean.
And Kali is just the feminine
Heard.
form of the word Kala. And what's interesting is that Kali is looked at as the goddess of time, doomsday, and death. Those same exact traits that we see given to the planet Saturn. But Kali and Kala both translate to the word black. And within the same family, you have the word Kalu, which in India is actually seen as a derogatory term against black people. It's pretty much like using the N-word with the ER on the end. Actually, just recently, there was a West Indies cricket player who came out claiming racism against his own teammates because they were constantly calling him Kalu. They actually called him Kalu so much that it became his nickname among the team. And this went on for years. And it wasn't until recent where he found out that that was considered a racist term. And, he went on to publicly call out his teammates on it. But more than likely, it's the same exact case as every other racist term used against dark-skinned people, where the word originally started out meaning dark or black. And then over the span of history, it got morphed into this racist, derogatory word. But just with the way it's used now, you can easily see that it fits in the same exact category as Kali and Kala. And ultimately, it just translates to black people. So again, you've got the word Ap, meaning water, and then you've got the word Kalu, which is referring to black people. And when you take those two terms, that compound, and you put it together, you get
62 views.
Kalu, black
We
people
are a very
from the water.
small group. Oh,
So
part
we have that
5.
definition that we can piece together with those two terms. But we also have some science because melanin has the ability to split the water molecule. And by split, meaning that it can literally split water in half and cause the oxygen and the hydrogen that come together to create water.
Are we gonna get into the fucking Yakub and the big head scientist shit? Cause oh man, are we doing this? Once the fucking black conspiracy guy mentions the word melanin, that we're about to go completely off the rails. Alright, let's go. Yeah, you roll a joint. I'm gonna take a sip and puff this black and mild for a sec. Alright, let's do it.
H2O to literally separate. Now, in order to split water or to separate water, you need to add some type of electrical property to the water, something that can create an electrical current. And melanin, when you get it hot enough, turns into an electrical conductor. Because when you think about how melanin absorbs the rays of the sun, there's a lot of heat building up during that process, and a whole lot of electromagnetic activity to cause melanin to absorb those sun rays. And so melanin, as a natural electrical conductor, is able to cause water to split. And when the water splits, the hydrogen and oxygen starts to increase, and you go from just that basic H2O to a lot more hydrogen and oxygen atoms. And once all of that starts to cool down, all of that hydrogen and oxygen bonds back together, and you actually end up...
Bro, I'm a college dropout barista. I don't know what the fuck a chemistry is. Can you not?
with more water than you had before the water split. But if you think about how water splitting works, and all of that hydrogen and oxygen bonds back together, and you actually end up with more water than you had before the water split.
So melanin creates water on its own. Okay.
But if you think about how water splitting works, and how you have that increase in hydrogen and oxygen, and then think about how the most popular...
Drunken Zeppelin, I don't have a degree in chemistry. I don't think you have a degree in chemistry. This guy doesn't have a degree in chemistry. Let's just take this all at face value.
The idea of how life started on Earth is that it started with water. You know, they always say without water, there would be no life. But how did that water expand and spread all over the Earth? Well, again, if you think about how melanin causes water to split and how that process ultimately creates more water.
No, don't say it. Please, no. Please don't. Please stop.
It would seem like one of the key elements in developing life on Earth would be melanin.
Fucking damn it. Wake me up inside.
And if you think about it, not only are you getting water from that splitting
Oh,
process,
my
but you're also
name
getting more
is
hydrogen and oxygen,
Amy.
another two key elements for life on Earth. And with melanin, you're also getting an increase in carbon. And remember, every living thing on Earth is carbon-based. And when you look at the chemical structure of melanin, carbon is the most prevalent element in melanin.
Whoa, organic chemistry using carbon. I'm fucking shook. Buddy, any compound produced by your body is going to have fucking carbon in it. Do you know why? Because you are a carbon-based life form. There was not... Melanin did not appear on the fucking planet and then create all of the water. Melanin is a pigment that is created by organic beings in order to shield themselves from the harsh radiation of the sun. Just let me die.
Melanin. You have hydrogen,
I want you guys to see the pain I put myself through for you.
nitrogen, oxygen, but nothing is more prevalent in melanin than carbon. And carbon, as its own separate element, is hydrophobic, meaning that water has little to no effect on it. And it
Carbon on its own is not hydrophobic. This is a hydrophobic compound.
basically repels water. And we're talking about pure carbon, that dark black element
That's Vanta Black.
that hasn't been mixed with any other elements. Because once you start adding hydrogen...
Oh, really? It hasn't been
spectrum,
mixed with
and it
any other elements? Like hydrogen? I'm going... This is the research that I do on my own when you guys aren't watching. I want you to understand that. So that you can understand the fucking brain damage that I put myself through for y'all.
basically repels water. And we're talking about pure carbon, that dark black element that hasn't been mixed with any other elements. Because once you start adding hydrogen,
Fucking Christ.
oxygen, and other elements, carbon
This
starts
is
to
how I
become
got
less
my
and less
PhD.
hydrophobic. But when you're dealing with
That's Vanta Black.
pure
I'm
carbon,
biting this Black and Mild so much that I am splintering the fucking wood tip.
as its own individual element, it's almost completely hydrophobic. You can submerge it all the way into the water. And it's so hydrophobic that it will literally build a barrier around itself in the water. And you'll be able to see like the barrier wrapped around this carbon as you...
That's not carbon. It is Vanta Black. What is Vanta Black made of? What is Vanta Black made of? Tell me. If it's pure carbon, I'll drink. Vanta Black observes nanotube arrays What is Vanta Black made of? Oh, fuck! It's pure carbon. It's pure fucking carbon. No. No, there's no way. It's carbon nanotube. Fuck! He's got me. He got me fucking again. I am livid in this moment. Alright. Okay. You know what? Danny Truth magnified. You fucking win. I believe it. You win. You win. I was wrong. You were right. That was a big one. Cheers.
move it around the water. It's crazy. And when you pull it back
So
out of the
mad.
water, it's
I'm
just as dry
so
as when you
mad
put it in.
about
Because
that.
again, there's little to no interaction between that carbon and the water. And when you first attempt to put it into the water, because it's so repellent to the water, it won't sink into the water. It actually just floats on top of the water with that same exact barrier wrapped around it. If you try to pour water onto it, it literally just either bounces right off of the carbon, or the water sits on top of the carbon in the form of perfectly formed water droplets.
I like that.
It's pretty much nearly impossible to soak this element, carbon, in water. You just can't get it wet. Carbon is literally the perfect water resistant element. Now, keep in mind that the average melanin chemical compound in the average human being has about 18 carbon atoms that make up that melanin polymer. But just imagine a human being with more. We're all carbon-based beings, all life.
Imagine a Vanta black human, the blackest man,
is carbon-based. But there's nobody that we can see with that carbon black hue. But if you look at how carbon interacts with water, and then you look at the alkali or the black,
I think you would have severe problems with being alive. Yeah, Cybot, there you go. He's there. He's in Mortal Kombat. And you know what happens if you take all the letters of Mortal Kombat and you smash them together? It makes a cube. And you know what you get out of a cube? A hexagon. Saturn. It's a conspiracy. Sorry, it's all true. It's all fucking true. Sorry.
people from the water.
I didn't
Those
write
half
the
man,
rules.
half fish, and that mythology of the Alkalu emerging from the water. It really all seems to fit.
I'm
There is
just
some
here
similarity between
reporting on the
science and the
facts.
mythology. And also think about the evolution theory and how at the very
Jesus
core of that
Christ,
theory
Noob
is this
Saibot
idea
is
that
a
human
fucking
life
Freemason.
started in the water, and that after going from that single cell in those microbial
Wait.
organisms, the very first thing that human beings evolved into was a fish. So based off of that theory,
We're back at fish. I fucking hate how he strings everything together. This is... I hate it so much.
our oldest ancestor would be a fish. The idea is that the fish is the ancestor to us all, and we owe our very existence to the fish. And eventually this fish emerged from the water onto dry land and was the one to take those first steps
Hate it.
towards the evolution
it
of
here.
human life. And eventually we would evolve
I don't
into
want
what we
this.
are today. But
Do you know where I got this? You know where I got this fucking thing? Somebody on Twitter fucking linked me this and was like, you need to open your mind more and accept the real facts of our reality. And I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be good for a stream. Lady who just linked me a 17-part fucking playlist of over like 3 hours of insane conspiracy content.
according to the theory, that entire process of human evolution was started by a fish that lived millions of years ago during the beginning stages of the earth. And
Yeah,
not too
I've
long
read
after the earth was formed,
Your Inner
this
Fish.
fish was here
Thank
and
you.
began
It's
to
a
evolve
good
and
fucking
eventually
book.
became us. So the question is, how much of that is actually pointing back to that mythology of the Apkallu? And remember, in the mythology, the Apkallu are demigods. They're the offspring of the gods. And they're actually brought into existence by a god named Ea, or Enki. And Enki was a part of a trinity along with two other gods, the god Anu and the god Enlil. But out of those three, Enki was considered the lord of the earth. Actually, the name Enki translates to Lord of the Earth. And in the mythology, Enki is the one who actually sets up order on the planet. He sets up all the different nations and then assigns all the different gods to different parts of the world. And he was also considered the Lord of Apsu, or the Lord of the deep water under the earth, which was also where you can find the temple of Enki, the same place where the Apkallu came from when they made their way onto the earth. And in Mesopotamia, they believed that all the water of the earth came from the Apsu. Lakes, rivers, oceans, all water came from one single source. And this was the water that was left on the earth after the waters above were separated from the waters below during the beginning of the creation of the universe. Now, remember the science with melanin having that ability to split the water molecule.
Now remember the science. Remember the science.
And form more hydrogen and more oxygen, and ultimately form more water. And think about how that might connect to this mythology. Now, he was also considered a creator god, and he was looked at as the one who was responsible for creating human beings. And human beings are created to serve the gods and to do the will of the gods, and basically operate as servants or slaves to the gods. And when you look into the Mesopotamian mythology, you actually have two different creation stories. The first one is found on a tablet called the Eridu Genesis, where you have the creation of the black-headed people who are given complete dominion and rulership over the earth.
Oh my
And
god,
then in
no,
the
we're
second
getting
tablet
into
called
the
the Enuma
fucking big
Elish,
head
you have a
scientist
second
shit.
creation story. And in that one, a second group of people are created called mankind. And in the Eridu Genesis, the black-headed people are removed from their place of authority on the earth. And mankind replaces them in that position and takes over under the authority of the gods. Now, the god Enki was associated with semen and amniotic fluid. So we're talking about fertility, reproduction, vitality, creation, and life, basically. All high energy aspects. And the symbol used to represent Enki was a half goat, half fish. The same exact symbol that would eventually be used to represent the constellation Capricornus. And there are physical artifacts of this goldfish symbology throughout Mesopotamia. The majority of them ended up in the Hearst Museum in California. And you can see it's just like that astrological symbol for Capricornus. You've got the upper half of a goat attached to the lower half of a fish. That same exact hybrid between the two, with the goat head, hind legs, and the fishtail. And there's also artifacts for the god
You
Enki
mean
himself.
4 legs.
And you can see he's depicted as half man, half fish, similar to the Alkalu, but obviously he's portrayed a lot more like a mermaid or a merman, because you got that upper body of a human and then that entire lower body of a fish. And remember, in mythology, the Alkalu are the offspring of the gods, and they come from this much more major god, Enki. And they say when they found these figurines of the goatfish and of Enki, that they found them buried together, really similar to the Alkalu figurines, buried under the foundations of buildings. And
Are
so
we
they
still
believe that
at
it's kind of the
1
same
1/4
concept where
speed,
they believe
please?
that these figurines had some type of protective aspect to them and would protect them from evil spirits. Now remember, the goatfish
We
is
need
supposed
to
to
go a
represent
little
Enki, one of the
faster.
original gods and one of the very first beings on the earth in Mesopotamian mythology. And there's actually a fish in nature called a mulidae, and it's also known as a goatfish. And
What
the
the
reason why is because this fish has 2 barbels, these 2 whiskers that hang down from the bottom of its mouth that look a lot like the beard of a goat. And you can find these
Okay.
goatfish all over the ocean. And one of the interesting traits of the goatfish is that it's able to camouflage itself. The goatfish will instantly change color in order to match its environment and to hide itself. And it'll usually hide
that's
on the ocean
cool.
floor and try to blend in with the sand. It'll
I
match
like
the color
that.
of its scales with the sand as much as it can, and then just lay in the sand as still as possible. And as soon as it thinks it's been spotted, these things take off out of sight. And this is a really effective defense mechanism for these fish against predators.
Yeah, except for
And
that
a lot of goatfish
giant
will actually
fucking-
hide during the day and then come out to feed at night. They're really covert and elusive fish. But just think about how one of the major characteristics
Just
of these
think about
goatfish is their ability to camouflage themselves, to
Just
hide
think about
themselves,
it.
and stay out of sight. And this same exact fish, this fish that tries to keep itself hidden, is being used to symbolize what would be one of the very first beings on the planet, one of the most ancient beings, one of the most ancient gods. And through astrology,
One of
it's
the
being
most
used to represent
ancient guys.
Capricornus, which is linked directly to Saturn. And think about the Alkalu covering themselves with those fish, and those fish covering almost their entire body, almost like they're trying to cloak themselves, like they're trying to hide themselves. So it's almost like the goatfish is symbolic for something that we don't see, but something that is definitely there, hiding in plain sight. Hence all this symbolism with things like the goatfish, which again would eventually turn into the sea goat of Capricornus. And looking at this symbol one last time, again, we have the goat, which can be connected to the devil, the Baphomet, Satan, evil, and just your lower nature. And then we have the fish, which seems to be connected to the highest energy possible, life itself. Also knowledge, wisdom, and ultimately God, things pertaining to your higher nature. So looking at the symbol of the sea goat or the goatfish, it's really almost like looking at a yin and yang symbol, God and Satan, good and evil, higher self, lower self. It's those 2 polar opposites, the negative
Oh, we've
and the
had
positive brought
Baphomet.
together
We
as
got
one. It's like
Baphomet
you're getting all of
back
that.
in
All of
like
these things that we
part
can see.
3.
It's like it's all tied into
Maybe
this
even
one symbol.
part 2.
So literally,
we,
it's
we
everything.
passed Baphomet.
And remember, this is the symbol for Capricornus, which again is ruled by Saturn. And just think about that concept
Now-
of negation.
Had I made a bingo card for this, would I have put Baphomet on it? I don't know. Maybe, but I wouldn't have put the fucking goatfish on it.
With
I
the
hate it
Freemasons,
here.
with Satan being the negation of God, and then the negation of Satan specifically being a black god. And then look at that symbol for Capricornus again. It's almost like you have a literal interpretation of that Freemasonic negation concept right here. And again, it's all leading right back to Saturn. Now, if you notice, wherever you see Saturn, you also always tend to see a
Alright,
lot of
we're on
symbolism
part
dealing with
7
black. The black gods, the black
of
cube.
10.
It's almost like black and Saturn
And part
go hand
10
in hand.
is
And so
2
the question is, what
hours
is up with that
long.
connection between Saturn and the color black? Well, there's a very old form of chemistry, a really ancient scientific practice called alchemy.
No.
And alchemy has been placed into the category of pseudoscience for a really long time now. It's become less and less accepted as a legit form of science by the majority of the scientific community, mainly because of what the people who were practicing it were trying to do. Because they were trying to use chemistry to turn base metals into precious metals. So like turning copper into silver, or turning zinc into aluminum, back when aluminum was still considered a precious metal. And the main focus, the ultimate goal, was to turn lead into gold, to take that low-grade base metal of lead and to somehow take it through the perfect set of steps to finally get it to turn into gold at the end.
It's like if I took everything, just everything I know about every single fucking conspiracy on the fucking planet, and I smashed it all together into one insane unified theory, you would get this. You would get this rambling, this connects to this, which connects to this, which comes back to that first thing, but now we're going over to this fifth thing. And it's just like, it would just keep going, and it just keeps going, and he keeps adding new shit. It's like, it's a tree. He had like 4 points at the start, and then it just, we haven't gotten there yet. By the end of this, if there's no lizard people, I'm gonna do a shot. No, we don't need lizard people. We had fish people. They have scales. That's easily interpretable into being lizard people. Like, we're already past lizard people. It's insane. The fact that you're right. Okay. If by the end of this series we don't get lizard people or transvestigations, I'll do a shot. If we get one of those, then we win the bingo. We win. I don't know what our prize is. Freedom from this nightmare, I suppose. That's our prize. But Bro, I don't fucking know what's going on anymore.
And there were two different types of alchemists. You had the alchemists who would try to transform metal, and then you had spiritual alchemists. The alchemists who were trying to use those same steps of alchemy to strengthen the spiritual side of themselves and to get that spiritual side to the highest level that it could go, with the intent of getting that spiritual side strong enough to overcome the limitations of the physical. So basically to really reach that state of mind over matter, and to get to the point where they weren't affected by things like disease and even death. And this whole process was broken down into 7 steps. And those 7 steps were symbolized by the 7 rungs of a ladder, with that final step or that final rung representing full spiritual enlightenment or full transformation, bringing the physical side completely together with the spiritual side. And each one of these steps was represented by a different metal. And each different metal was linked to one of the 7 chakra points of the body. And they were both ultimately linked to a particular planet. And the very first step on that ladder, called calcination, is connected to the planet Saturn. And Saturn is connected to the root chakra and represented by lead. Now, the reason that lead is used as that very first metal in the steps of alchemy is because of a lot of its attributes. It's being used to represent the lowest state of the mind. Because if you think about it, lead is one of the heaviest metals. So it can be really hard to maneuver and to handle. But at the same time, it's very soft. All it takes is the scratch of a fingernail to put an impression into lead. So it's very easy to manipulate the shape of lead. It's also one of the most dangerous metals. And when dealing with it, you got to worry about things like lead poisoning, which builds up in the body slowly over time. So at this stage, you can look at the mind in the same way. Hard to handle, but easily manipulated, easily reshaped, and easily reformed. And a high possibility of being extremely toxic if it's not handled the right way. And then with the root chakra,
does it all link together if it's not all true? Everything's true. I'm going to become a radical
so it's dealing with your lower nature, your basic instincts. And it's basically the foundation of all the rest of the chakras. So if that root chakra is unbalanced, it pretty much sends everything else out of whack. You can pretty much forget about all the rest of the chakras. That root chakra is where the stability of everything else starts. And when you have an unstable root chakra, it means that you're basically giving completely into the physical and allowing yourself to be controlled by your lower nature. And the root chakra is connected to the earth. So it's the one chakra that keeps you grounded here and can keep you grounded here if you never learn how to control it, how to discipline it. And then the color of the root chakra is also red. And if used in the right way, that red can symbolize stability, security, confidence. But just think about an unstable root chakra, somebody getting fully into their lower nature. And then think about that classic depiction of the red devil and that idea that the devil uses all of the riches and the pleasures of the physical world to tempt you and to ultimately take control of you and to bring you down to his level and to get you to serve him and ultimately to destroy you. You know how they say an idle mind is the devil's playground. So a mind that's not being put to use is vulnerable to the temptations of the devil. So you've got the red devil and the red root chakra, or your lower self, your lower nature, which is being worked on in that first step of alchemy. And this is all happening through a process called calcination. And in chemistry, calcination is the process of raising a solid object up to a high temperature, just below the melting point. And the purpose is to remove any toxic substances, any impurities, and sometimes even removing any organic matter. And it can literally be looked at as a process of purification. So think about that from a spiritual standpoint. Removing impurities, removing toxic elements, and separating yourself from matter. Removing matter from the equation and starting that process of allowing the mind to take over matter. It's kind of what you're getting from this process of calcination from an alchemical standpoint. Now, because this first step is all about burning away all those toxins, impurities, and using that heat to remove yourself from that matter, and because all of this is connected to Saturn, in alchemy, Saturn is actually looked at as the black sun. And this process of calcination is called the negrido, or the blackness. And in this phase, when all those things are removed, all those toxins, impurities, symbolically you're brought down to the most uniform form of existence, black matter. And because it's the first stage in this process of alchemy, it's also the most difficult and the most negative stage. So they usually use what looks like a lot of dark, scary imagery to illustrate this process, because it's supposed to be the most frightening step, letting go of physical attachments, things that you might want to hold on to, but you actually need to let go of. It really starts to tear away at your ego and forces you to face that hard reality of just exactly who you really are underneath the surface, without all those physical things to hide behind. It's the most difficult stage because it's literally like a full detox from the physical, letting go of the material world completely. And through this concept, the black sun, or Saturn, is supposed to be at the forefront of all of this, making this process happen. Now, this black sun symbolism would also end up getting adopted by the Nazis in Germany. And most people think that this was a secret symbol for the Nazis because there's no known images of them actually using the symbol in public. They never used it out in the open, but there's a large mosaic of the black sun inside one of the Nazi castles in Germany. And there's supposed to be all this mystery surrounding what they actually used it for. Nobody really has an answer as to what the connection between the black sun
did we get
and
to
the Nazis was.
esoteric
But we know for sure that
fascism?
Hitler and the
The
Nazis
2 minutes I've been gone.
went around to all these ancient civilizations stealing information. And that's how they eventually got the swastika.
God
And some people actually think it was a substitute for the swastika.
fucking
And it was supposed to
damn
represent
it.
the rise of the Aryan race and their
I walk
conquest
away
to
for
dominate
2
and take
minutes,
complete control of the planet.
and we're
we all
on
know what
some
Hitler and the Nazis were all
fucking
about, bringing about
Nazi
that quote-unquote racially pure society devoted to German greatness. And remember where all of this started, where all these invasions of all these ancient civilizations of the past stem from. The Germanic tribes coming out of Asia and seemingly coming out of nowhere. Nobody knows where these people came from. But we can see clearly where that Nazi ideology comes from. And eventually you would get neo-Nazi groups and other white supremacist groups who would adopt this same symbol of the black sun. You'll see it on flags, shirts, posters, websites that are all connected to these
God
white
damn it.
extremist groups. And on top of the white supremacists, the black sun was also adopted by some groups of Satanists. They use the black sun in the same way as the Baphomet to represent that extreme level of satanic energy, or that lower nature pan energy. Even the singer Shakira got herself into some controversy a couple of years ago because one of her necklaces that was for sale for the tour she was on had the black sun symbolism on it, and people started comparing it to the Nazi symbol, and she started to catch a lot of heat for it. And it got to the point where it was eventually taken down, and she came out and apologized. But whether she was the one that gave the okay for that or not, I don't know. But it's clearly the symbol for the black sun.
fucking
It doesn't just resemble it; it is the symbol.
Oh,
and again, maybe she had no
Shakira.
control over it, but it's still crazy either way. And from alchemy, we know that that black sun is pointing back to Saturn. And there's a lot of places you could go with that whole black sun symbolism. But looking at it from a scientific standpoint, a black sun would technically be a dead star, because when a star dies, if it doesn't completely collapse on itself and become a black hole, then as soon as it cools down and no longer emits any heat or light, it becomes a black dwarf. At least that's the theory anyway. But you got to wonder, where did the inspiration for that theory
I can
come
feel
from? Now remember, there is that
myself
idea floating out there that at one
losing
point
brain
Saturn was
cells.
literally
They're turning
our sun,
off
that it
one at
replaced
a
the sun that we
time.
see in the sky today. And so when the people in these ancient civilizations looked up in the sky,
I'm dying.
they would see Saturn, just like we
This
can look
is
up and
how
see the
I
sun
die.
today. And when you look at Saturn through a telescope, with the way that it's positioned in the sky, from our vantage point, you can see the planet itself, and then you can see the majority of the rings of Saturn surrounding the planet. And from that vantage point, with the planet in the middle and those rings surrounding the planet, Saturn looks a lot like an eye. It looks like you have the pupil of an eye surrounded by the frame of an eye. And so you can imagine if Saturn was closer to the Earth at some point in the past, when people looked up in the sky, this is what they would have seen. It literally would have looked like an eye in the sky, like an eye looking down on the planet. Now we know that
Stop
Egypt
it.
is one of the oldest known civilizations that
You
we know.
said
And when
earlier
you look
that
at all of the
Saturn
hieroglyphs
used
and all
to
the
be the
monuments,
sun.
one of the symbols that you see throughout Egypt the most is the eye. They depicted the eye a lot. You can find the eye all throughout Egypt. And then more specifically in Egyptian mythology,
Because they had eyes. What?
You have the Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra, two different eyes that look identical. But of course, those two different eyes both have their own separate origin stories. Now, with the Eye of Horus, Horus is the son of two of the most ancient gods, Isis and Osiris. And Horus's father, Osiris, is killed by his own brother, Set, because Set wanted to take his position as the supreme god. But there was one thing in the way of that. Isis and Osiris had a son, Horus. And being Osiris's son, Horus held that rightful position as the supreme god. So Set set out to kill Horus and finally take over as the supreme god. Now, fast forward a little bit, and Horus and Set are battling for the throne. And during that battle, Set gouges out Horus's left eye, literally pulls his eye out. But even despite that, Horus is able to fight off Set, and Set flees. He runs away, and the battle ends. But now Horus has lost his left eye. So Horus goes to one of the elder gods, Hathor, and Hathor restores his eye. And when Horus's eye is fully restored, he offers it over to his father, Osiris, hoping that it can somehow restore his life. And the Eye of Horus will go on to symbolize sacrifice, healing, restoration, and protection. And then we have the Eye of Ra. And in this version of mythology, Ra is the supreme god, but he's getting old, and he's kind of starting to lose his influence over the people. So he goes to his father, an even more ancient god named Nun. And Nun, by the way, literally represents the ancient waters, the water that has been around since the beginning of time, that everything came from. And the Egyptians believed that all the space outside of Earth was surrounded by water. But Ra goes to his father, Nun, and asks him how he can get back the respect and the reverence of the people. So Nun tells him to sit on his throne and take out his right eye. And the eye immediately takes on its own form and becomes the goddess Sekhmet. And Sekhmet is this bloodthirsty god that immediately goes out and starts causing total destruction. She just continually moves through the earth, causing death everywhere she goes. And when Ra tries to get her to stop, she just keeps going, like she's hell-bent on destruction. So Ra sets up a council with the rest of the gods and the people, and they devise this plan to trick Sekhmet, to bait her in with this vial of blood that's also been contaminated with some stuff that will make her pass out. So Sekhmet falls for it, and while she's out, Ra takes away about half of her power. And when she wakes up, she's still bloodthirsty and still a god of destruction, but now she only uses that power to protect things. And after this, Ra steps down from his throne, and this is when Osiris, the father of Horus, becomes the new supreme god. So from these two mythologies, you can see you have two gods sitting on the same throne, representing the two opposite sides of that throne, the left eye and the right eye. And with that left eye, you're getting healing, restoration, life, positive energy. And then that right eye is connected to destruction, chaos, and death. So of course, negative energy. So you've got negative, positive, good, evil. You've got these dual energies being represented by these two eyes.
Now, I will say, in occult teachings, they often refer to these two different sides and aspects as the left-hand path and the right-hand path. And actually, well, I guess it matches up from our perspective, but from their perspective they would be opposite. The left-hand path, which would be the Eye of Horus, is the destruction and death stuff, and the right-hand path is vice versa. But from our perspective, with the Eye of Ra being on the left, it would make sense.
Two opposing sides of the same source. Now, once the federal government of the United States was established in the early 1700s.
Okay, wait. We just spent 10 minutes talking about ancient Egyptian mythology, the lore between Ra, Osiris, Sekhmet, all this shit, and then you immediately jump to...
Of the same source. Now, once the federal government of the United States was established...
The federal government of the United States. I am taking crazy pills. I am. They're right here on my screen.
In the early 1700s, we would get the Great Seal of the United States. And the story behind this thing is that originally Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson were all on a committee to help create the seal. And it ended up getting passed down to two more committees. And we would eventually get the design that we have today, the bald eagle on the front and the Eye of Providence on the back. And in 1935, the front and back of the Great Seal was placed on the back of the $1 bill. But if you take a closer look at that right side with the 13 stars and the bald eagle, and look closely at those 13 stars and how they're arranged. Now, if you notice, they're perfectly aligned.
Oh my god, it's a
hexagram.
fucking
The
hexagon.
stars are lined up in just the right position to give you a hexagram.
I'm
and if you
going
notice, you
to
also have a
beat
hexagon
myself to death
surrounding that hexagram. And remember, those
Jesus
13 stars
fucking
represent the 13
Christ, it's a
colonies that
hexagon.
originally formed the United States. But interestingly enough, you also had 13 states that made up the Confederacy. And this is why when you look at the Confederate flag, it has 13 stars on it. Then just below that in Latin, we have E pluribus unum, which translates to out of many, one. And then just below that is the bald eagle, holding the olive branch on the left and holding arrows on the right. And of course, that olive branch symbolizes peace and the arrows symbolize war. So you got two dueling energies, just like the Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra. Positive energy on the left, negative energy on the right. Now, what's interesting about the bald eagle is that in Greek mythology, the god Zeus would sometimes take on the form of an eagle. He would literally transform himself into an eagle. And there's one particular story in Greek mythology where Zeus is looking down from the heavens and notices a young boy named Ganymede. And Zeus becomes infatuated with Ganymede. So Zeus creates a storm and then transforms into his eagle form. And then he flies down,
those fucking
swoops up Ganymede, and takes him back up into the clouds and brings him to his bedside. But there's actually this whole historical conflict over this mythology where a lot of people believe that this story wasn't added in until the 5th century, and that the Greco-Romans added it in later because you have writings from Plato about this myth where he literally said that the Greco-Romans made up this story to justify their quote-unquote unnatural pleasures. And if that's the case, then this eagle would be more akin to the Baphomet, a representation of that satanic pan energy.
Everything
and there's
is
definitely
a
a Greek
Baphomet.
connection to this eagle because just above the eagle you have Latin writing. Then on the left we have the Eye of Providence, and at the very top in Latin is Annuit Coptis, which translates to he has favored our undertakings. And they say that he is supposed to be a reference to God. And then at the bottom is Novus Ordo Seclorum, which translates from Latin to a new order of the ages. Now remember, e pluribus unum translates to out of many, one. And so this is where we get a lot of people talking about the one world order or the new world order. And then we have the half pyramid.
No, it's supposed to mean that we're a multicultural society.
With the Roman numeral 1776, which is the year that the 13 colonies declared independence. And then you have the 13 steps of that half pyramid, which again are supposed to represent the 13 colonies, leading up to the top of the pyramid, which is the all-seeing eye, hovering over those 13 steps, almost like an eye in the sky, with that light illuminating from it as if it was a sun. Now, there is no doubt that they took this directly from ancient Egypt, because on the walls of ancient Egypt is a nearly identical hieroglyph of a pyramid leading up to the sun. So you got a question, what is the all-seeing eye? Is it a sun? Are we looking at the Eye of Horus, the Eye of Ra? What's going on? Well, if we look at what would seem to be the upper echelon of society, the celebrities, public figures, people with large amounts of notoriety and influence over the masses, at one point or another, you can find instances of what seems like them all doing the same exact thing, throwing up this one eye symbolism. You have all these instances of all these celebrities doing the same exact thing, placing their hand over one of their eyes and leaving just one eye visible. And like I said, it's not just one. It seems like you have just about all of them doing this. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a public figure with some type of celebrity to their name who hasn't done it at one point or another. Musicians, actors, actresses, politicians, anybody with a little bit of notoriety has done this one eye symbolism. And again, it'd be one thing if it was just a few people, but it literally seems like everybody. And it's not just some recent trend, because you can go as far back as the 50s and 60s and still find celebrities and the popular figures during those times making the exact same.
It's almost like there's only so many things you can do with your hands and face in a photograph.
Hand gesture, covering one eye and only exposing that one eye, just giving you that one eye. And it seems to stretch all over the world. No matter what part of the world, the people with influence, the people with stardom, all seem to be throwing up this same thing. And it's not impossible that there's some world-renowned photographer who just loves to take shots of people in this exact same pose. But it's happening all over the world and spanning across different decades, not to mention different industries. And yet everybody is doing the same exact hand gesture. And when you think about it, the one thing that all of these people have in common is that they're all big-name personalities. They all have fame, and they all have stardom. That celebrity status is the one thing that connects all of them together.
Though
so
I do believe in the Illuminati death cult
of society,
so
on a large scale, billionaires, multimillionaires. All of these people are part of the upper class of society. People who are really reaping the benefits of the material world. And then they have the fame and the notoriety to go along with it. So their material success is on public display for the masses. Everybody is witnessing that success and also watching them reap the benefits of that success, experiencing material gain at the highest level. And remember that full indulgence into the material world, into the physical, is going to lead you to Satan. Because when you fully give into the material world, it becomes matter over mind, that upside down pentagram, just like human beings being chained to that black cube of the devil. And remember those characteristics of the devil, tempting you with the riches and the pleasures of the material world and trying to keep you trapped in your lower nature. And it seems like they're pretty much giving it to you, clear as day, as to what this one eye symbolism is alluding to. It's like it's all right there in plain sight. You have high profile personalities being used to tempt you with all the things of the material world. And so that one eye is like a universal signal for being a part of that. And it may not even be that deep for a lot of these celebrities. A lot of them might just be posing the way they're being told by a photographer, and that's the end of it. But that still doesn't take away from the influence that these people have over the masses, and that power to be able to sway the focus of the masses and to keep the general focus of the masses on the material world. But there is times where the symbolism is so blatant.
Why aren't you pointing out that this guy has the fucking thingus with his thingus?
And so in your face that you got to wonder just how much do some of these people really know. And it's hard not to think that they might know a lot more than they're letting on. Sometimes the subliminal messages
Saturn hand tattoo
that some of these people put out are just so blatantly obvious that it just makes you wonder. It's almost like they're just giving it to you outright. And again, maybe they're just posing the way they're being told to pose, and they have no clue where any of this stuff could possibly go. But the symbolism is there. I mean, we know that the CBS logo is an eye, and the guy that created it said that he was inspired by the Eye of Providence. And when you look at that eye, it looks almost identical to the way Saturn looks through a telescope. So there's no doubt that that eye is alluding to Saturn. But it seems like there's even more there, because there's times when they'll put the two fingers over their eye, and it's clearly alluding back to Egypt.
His argument is just, why is everybody doing it?
And the only question would be, which eye are they
And the
representing?
question
Well, with the rest of the symbolism,
answer is
seemingly
because
leading back to Satan
everyone's
and the material
doing it.
world,
I
lower
don't
nature. It seems like a good guess would be the eye with the most negative and low vibrational aspects, because the symbolism from a lot of these people gets even more blatant. A lot of them will throw up what looks like that OK hand sign, and they'll usually,
which means they're white supremacists,
put it right over their eye. And again, at face value, it seems like nothing. It seems pretty innocent. But again, with these celebrities, we're dealing with a heavy promotion of the material world. And if you really look at that OK hand sign with the two fingers making a circle and then the three fingers going up, it kind of looks like 3 sixes overlapping each other. It looks really similar. If you layer 3 sixes on top of each other, you get something that looks almost identical to the hand sign.
For sure.
And one of the other places that you'll find 3 sixes is with the hexagon. A hexagon has 6 sides, 6 vertices, and 6 angles. So a hexagon is giving you those 3 sixes. But you also get 3 sixes from carbon. About 98% of all carbon.
We're back to the fucking carbon.
Is what's called carbon-12. And carbon-12 is made up of 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons. Now remember, all organic life is carbon-based. So pretty much all organic life is going to be based on carbon-12. But here's the thing, there's also carbon-13 that makes up that other 1.5% of all carbon-based life. And carbon-13.
Dude, if he brings up Monster, I'm gonna drink. I fucking love Monster.
Has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 7 electrons.
Monster.
And again, carbon-13 makes up less than 1.5% of all organic life on Earth. While again, the majority of life on Earth is based on carbon-12, those 3 sixes. So the majority of the material world is based on 3 sixes. And again, we've got these celebrities who heavily promote the material world and represent the highest level of physical success, throwing up what looks like 3 sixes, and in a lot of cases placing those 6s over their eye.
I'll have a video coming out on my YouTube channel at some point eventually. That's my Monster Energy tier list. So keep an eye out.
The looks of it, that eye is ultimately taking you back to Saturn.
I'll add everyone.
And of course, we've got that hexagon on Saturn. And the hexagon, again, is going to take you back to 3 sixes. And ultimately going to take you back to carbon-12, which is going to lead you to the physical world, or at least a good portion of it. So you have all these celebrities throwing up what looks like 3 sixes. And it's another thing that they've been doing for decades. You got pretty much every single person with any type of notoriety, any type of fame, doing it. There's almost not a time that you...
No, because it's an okay. Okay. Like... Oh yeah, she's got some eyes on her.
You can't go back.
There is no such thing as a coincidence.
There's almost not a time that you can't...
That's her. There's no such thing as a coincidence. The fact that you're looking at my OK hand sign means that you're energetically aligned with me and this conspiracy.
Can't go back and find the people with stardom, the people with celebrity status, throwing up this hand sign. I mean, it's just decades and decades of what seems like literally everybody doing it. All the people with the most influence over society. And again, all the people with the most material success. They're all throwing up 3 sixes. And not just the actors, musicians, politicians, and the athletes. I mean, it's literally everybody with any type of influence. Everybody with a high level of material success in front of the public eye at some point in their career, you'll find that they flashed.
I'm glad
this
you
hand sign.
red circled
And again,
that
it
one for
stretches
me. I wouldn't have been
across
able to
different
find
industries,
Trump's hand
and it's
without
spread out
it.
throughout history. And there's times when you'll see them throw this hand sign up, and they'll also be throwing up what looks like a set of horns right along with it. And it's easy to think nothing of it, but we know if you trace it back far enough,
God.
those horns can lead you back to the god Pan, the goat.
Oh my
the Baphomet.
God.
And all of that is going to ultimately lead you back to Satan. And just think about the connection. Again, you got these celebrities seemingly playing a key role in keeping you focused on the material. So metaphorically helping to keep you chained.
Listen, look. Anytime your hands are in any position, that's a reference to satanic goat deities. No, I don't have to explain myself. Watch my 4-hour YouTube video. It'll show you everything. Sorry, not sorry.
To that black cube of the devil, keeping your attention focused on the things of the physical world. All of the things that the devil would use to pull you in and keep you trapped. You know, fortune, fame, material possessions,
Fuck.
an abundance of physical pleasure, keeping you trapped in your root chakra. And like I said, some of these people may not realize just exactly what they're promoting. They might genuinely be completely out of the loop, but then there's the ones that take it to the next level, wearing clothes with the upside down pentagram, the Baphomet, and wearing all this stuff with the goat symbology right out in the open. Wearing shirts with Aleister Crowley on them, walking around with shirts with his face on it, even with his "do what thou wilt" quote. Then you've got the celebrities that are literally walking around with the numbers 666, just blatantly letting you know exactly what they're about. 666 plastered, big as day, right on their shirt.
See, that's more believable. Show me that shit. Don't show me fucking dumb hand signs. Show me celebrities just like, yeah, just wearing the Aleister Crowley fit today. No big deal.
For everybody to see. I mean, we even know before Biggie Smalls passed away, he was planning on starting his own clothing line. And it was literally going to be called 666. And you can see him and the rest of Junior Mafia wearing some of the clothes just before he passed away. Again, seemingly just giving it to you outright what these people are about and what their role is in that position as the influencers of the masses. Biggie Smalls was all about promoting that low vibrational gutter hip hop.
So what you're telling me is that Instagram influencers are satanic. Got you.
And a lot of people don't like to talk about
Heard.
it. Really
I
dark
agree with
a lot
that.
of the lyrics.
I'm taking
and this is the type of stuff that when you listen
board.
to it repeatedly, it can be really damaging to your mind because those lyrics are speaking to your lower nature. And even if it's not affecting you consciously, it can still be doing all types of damage to you subconsciously. But yeah, you got all these celebrities wearing all this different stuff, seemingly using all this different symbolism and throwing up all these different hand signs that all seem to go back to Satan, that seem to correlate with negative, low vibrational energy. Again, keeping you trapped in the material. Again, you'd be hard pressed to find an influential person
He's
who hasn't
wearing
thrown
a
up that
shirt
OK
that
hand sign.
says
And here's the crazy part.
evil.
In 2017, the OK hand sign was officially considered a hate symbol. And so
Yeah, it was because of fucking 4chan.
supposedly it started out as a joke, but eventually you had a bunch of different white supremacist groups that started to use this hand sign. The three fingers are supposed to create a W for white, and then that circle is supposed to form a P for power. So after 2017, the OK hand sign now stands for white power. And again, you've got a bunch of different white supremacist groups that are using this hand sign.
Just
Now, if
let
you
me
notice,
die.
all
I
of this
don't
symbolism
want to live
that
in
can-
this clown world anymore. We shouldn't have stopped on the neo-Nazi
lead you back to Saturn and
frame.
to Satan is also going to always lead you back to the oppression of black people. It's the exact same thing with the black sun. You've had people throwing up this OK hand sign for decades. Any and everybody, literally everybody with any type of influence and high levels of success.
It's a white supremacist
Any and
hand
everybody.
sign.
Literally,
There's Obama throwing up the white supremacist hand sign, which means Obama wasn't actually black the whole time. Obama's white. Hashtag confirmed.
everybody with any type of influence
He just has
and
a
high
lot of
levels of
spray
success
tan.
within the system. They've all thrown up the OK hand sign,
Hashtag
or what looks like
confirmed.
those
Will Smith, white man, confirmed.
3 sixes. And then you fast forward to
Fucking
today, and now this same
scream.
hand sign is being associated
I'm
with
gonna
white power. So we
fucking
got Saturn,
scream. I
Satan,
need
3
to
sixes,
take a
the
walk.
material world,
I
and
need
black
some
oppression by
fresh
white
air.
people, all seemingly
I
being
need
connected
to
together
fucking
in some type of way.
clear my
Now you gotta
head.
understand this hand sign has been around for a very long time. And in Hinduism and Buddhism, each finger
Oh, the Indians, the Hindus, they're white supremacists now. I'm sorry, guys. I know you had like 2,000 years of culture before this happened, but sorry, this hand sign is
a different meaning. And when you place different fingers together, you get different interpretations. And when the fingers are placed in this position, it's called the Gaian mudra, or the mudra of knowledge. Now, the word mudra just means a hand gesture. And this particular mudra is focused on strengthening the mind, sharpening your memory, strengthening your brain capacity.
Do you remember back in like 2017 or 18 where there's that photo of it was like a bunch of high school kids, and like 2 or 3 of the kids had like the circle down by their fucking waist, because the actual circle game is that if you look at it when it's below someone's waist, that means you're gay and they get to punch you. And it drew fucking national media attention because somebody said it was a white supremacist thing, but no, it was actually just a prank for their fucking classmates for the goddamn yearbook. I hate it here. I'm so done with this whole, like, culture and mindset of, like, everything is secretly some sort of offensive thing, or some dig at someone else, or I just hate it.
And basically bringing out the full potential of the mind. Now, remember, you got all these influential people throwing up something that looks identical to the Gaian mudra. And remember, these are all the people that have the strongest influence over the minds of the masses. Because think about it, you've got religious figures throwing it up, astronauts, astrophysicists.
I hope you're right about that pendulum
different levels of knowledge to the general public. And their main function, again, seems to be getting you to focus all your attention on the material world. So getting you to allow your matter to take over your mind. And then a lot of times they take that Gaian mudra and they place it over their eye. And of course, from everything we can see, it looks like that eye is pointing back to Saturn. So it's almost like it's hinting at Saturn controlling the mind of the masses and keeping the masses trapped in the material world. Now, another thing that you see a lot, the upside down cross. And I think we all know it's a blatant sign of Satanism, taking the traditional cross and turning it.
Except that it's actually an even more traditional sign of Christianity, because St. George was crucified upside down because, okay, wait, no, he's going to say all this.
On his head. It almost doesn't get any more blatant, because we know that upside down cross goes back to the Church of Satan. And outside of the pentagram, it's like one of the most recognizable satanic symbols out there. But believe it or not, people who practice Satanism actually adopted this symbol from the early Christians. Because
okay,
Christianity,
thank
the
you.
upside down
Okay,
cross
see,
is actually
he did
called
it.
St. Peter's cross. Because, St. Peter was one of the 12 disciples. And he denied being a disciple.
Sorry, buddy, you got to get up
Jesus
pretty early in the morning to out conspiracy the conspirasphere.
And if he knew Jesus. And all 3 times he said no. So there's this belief by the Catholic Church that
if I'm ever not beating you at the conspiracy game, that's when you got to start worrying. That's when you got to be like, ooh, Seamus is off his game. What's wrong?
Because of how much Peter turned his back on Jesus. After Jesus was crucified, Peter felt like he wasn't worthy of being crucified in the same way that Jesus was. Yeah. So he personally asked the Roman guards to crucify him
saint
upside
wrong,
down.
but
and so for the Catholics,
I got the story
St. Peter's
correct.
Cross became a symbol of humility. And you can actually see them using this cross during different processions. And specifically the head of the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican. Because remember how important St. Peter is as a patron saint to the Vatican. So much so that, again, they named the headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church St. Peter's Basilica in honor of St. Peter. And remember how they depict St. Peter in the Vatican as that dark, black figure that they dress up in royalty.
He's
with the crown and the robe.
Out of
and then underneath
onyx.
that crown is that permanent halo. Which, again, because we're dealing with the Romans,
because
you can't
the
discount the connection between that halo
splits the
of St. Peter
molecules
and that halo around Saturn. And
creates
remember, with
free water out of
Saturn,
nowhere,
you also have a cross. And that cross represents matter. And then when you fold that cross and bring it into a third-dimensional form, it becomes a cube. So looking at the cross from a third-dimensional form, no matter how you turn it, whether it's right side up or upside down, in that third-dimensional form, it's still going to always be a cube. So just like with the goatfish, the eye of Horus, the eye of Ra, with the right side up cross or the upside down cross, you've got 2 dueling energies, 2 opposite forces coming from the same source. So when you actually look at it with that upside down cross, representing somebody that's unfit of being looked at as Christ-like, and because of that connection to Satanism, it's almost like the Pope and everybody in the Vatican is bowing down and paying homage to that satanic, low vibrational half of this cube.
No, that's not what it's like at all.
of duality.
Oh my
The good,
god.
the evil, the negative, the positive. It's all coming from the same source, and they're sending all their energy to that negative side. And it's just like in Hinduism with the god Shani, with Shani being that physical manifestation of Saturn. And of course, Saturn is linked to the root chakra. And so because of that, Shani rules over the lower nature of humanity. And in Hinduism, when you're working with Shani, you're basically working to discipline your lower self and bring about that balance of the lowest part of yourself, the root chakra, the foundation. And in order for that to happen, you have to face all those negative aspects head on. In order to learn how to balance them, you have to experience them. And so Shani is known for manifesting those negative aspects and actually bringing obstacles and adversaries into your life, into your path, for you to work through.
It's a dichotomy when
and
he
move
wants it to
into
be.
that more balanced state. And
but it's
another interesting thing is that the
not
only way
when he
to
doesn't want it
decrease
to be.
those negative
Everything
effects of
is
Shani,
just
other than working your way through
whatever
them,
makes
is to
it
worship
fit
and to basically
his
give into your
fucking
lower self,
crazy
your root chakra. And if you worship
schizo
him, you gain power
conspiracy web
and success
nightmare.
within the material
And
world.
it's his
But it's a give and
world,
take
you know.
because
We're just
also
living in
don't
it.
overcome Shani, and you basically stay
Oh
stuck
God!
in Saturn, in that root chakra.
Don't
Remember,
worry.
the root chakra, just like
Don't
Saturn,
worry.
is connected to
We've
the earth.
only
And so
got
if you give into it, it keeps you grounded
part
on the
8,
earth, and you never reach the
part
next level.
9,
There was a guy that worked as a mechanical engineer at NASA named Norman Bergman,
and then
most people are probably familiar with it.
2-hour
And he wrote a book in
long
1986
part
called The
10.
Ringmakers of Saturn.
Oh
Now,
wait,
Saturn has quite a...
wait! I didn't even see the comments. Let's go back one.
In 2017,
Okay, yeah. You're on a roll. I knew religion was a farce because I'm a r/atheism Reddit gentleman. What I didn't know. Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because okay.
now Saturn has quite a few rings,
Let's
but
see these comments.
just 3 main rings.
You're inspiring a lot of great minds. Don't stop, bro. Great job on this project. 5th time watching this. Alexander Jackson, what the fuck are you on? No videos. Who do you follow? Nothing? You have nothing, and you have 16 subscribers. How the fuck? Joined 2012. You don't follow anyone? This dude has been on YouTube since 2012, and he does not subscribe to a single fucking account. That is actually insane to me. That is psychopath behavior. I'm the owner of a publishing company. Oh yeah, I do follow Illuminati. She's fun. Oh, she has a John McAfee video. Well, when we do our McAfee stream, we'll take a peek at her video too.
Rings. And those 3 main rings.
Yeah, I follow her because I like to know about MLMs and whatnot.
Are the largest rings, and also the brightest rings, the rings that we can see from a distance with the naked eye. And that's rings A, B, and C, with the A ring being the furthest away from the planet and the C ring being the closest. And the space between these rings are called divisions, the gaps between each ring. And again, Saturn has a lot of rings, so there's also a lot of divisions or gaps. But the 2 largest divisions are between the A ring and the B ring. You have the Cassini division in the B ring, which is the largest division or the largest gap. And then in the A ring, you have the Inky division. Now, in his book, The Ringmakers of Saturn, Norman Bergman pointed out some of the odd things that he noticed while looking at the images from the Voyager probe. And basically, he noticed that when looking at the same exact section of Saturn's rings from 2 separate probes, the rings looked different. the same exact section that was photographed by Voyager 1 looked a lot different when it was photographed by Voyager 2. It actually looked like the rings were expanding or growing from one image to the next. So he kept looking deeper into all the photographs of Saturn from the Cassini probe and the Voyager probe. And he started to pinpoint what he thought to look like these bright objects. He called them luminous sources hanging around the rings of Saturn. And the more he analyzed these things, the more he noticed that wherever he saw these luminous sources, he also saw these long, narrow, bright lines. And they looked like they had some type of structure to them. And he started to propose that these luminous sources, or these light sources, were coming from these structures and were like some type of residue coming off of these structures that seemed to be attaching themselves to the rings of Saturn. And as he started analyzing them more, he started to notice even more of the structure of these objects, and that it was almost shaped like a cylinder. And that's when he started referring to these things as vehicles. And because he was always spotting them near the edges of the rings of Saturn, and because of that drastic change in the size of the rings of Saturn that he had seen between Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, he started to theorize that either these vehicles were forming the rings of Saturn, siphoning material from the rings of Saturn, or both. But he definitely strongly believed that there was a link between these vehicles and the divisions in Saturn's rings, and specifically the two main divisions, Cassini and Inky. And so with all that in mind, he started referring to these things as electromagnetic vehicles, aka the ring makers.
I'll have to find a way
of
to
Saturn.
show you guys
and
my
because of everything that he had come across in his data, he pretty much believed that anywhere where you could find rings around the planet, you could also find these vehicles. And he believed that there was a good chance that they were all over the solar system. Now, eventually he did an interview about his findings, and this thing ended up going.
Why did you... What? Nose, tongue, branch, disc... Okay, weird.
A lot of people have seen it.
Hopefully these are technical terms.
He was asked if he had come across any evidence of there being actual sentient life inside these vehicles.
Project Camelot. We are here with Norm Bergman. He was with NACA, which was the early precursor of
Project
NASA.
Camelot?
And he also worked for Ames Research. He has also worked for Lockheed Martin, before it was Lockheed Martin. And he's written a book called The Ringmakers of Saturn. And so when you're talking about the craft in the rings of Saturn, you're talking about something huge, right?
Yes.
Much bigger than we could even conceive of, I understand. What is it? I don't know, was it 70,000 square feet?
I could, in looking down on the rings, I could see parallel lines crossing the ring, all the rings at once. Mm-hmm. That's about as long as you can get them.
That's incredible.
But I could tell that those lines demarked the outside of an object. Mm-hmm. And that's how I came up with the scale I presented there of different lengths of these things.
Well, did we build it?
Pardon?
Did we build it? Who built it, the craft?
I don't know who built it, but what I found out is these things inhabit Saturn. That's where I first discovered them. And they're proliferating. They're now Uranus and Jupiter. Wherever you see some rings now, why, that's one of these.
You see the craft?
Yeah, I call it a ring maker. Yeah.
Okay, you call it a ring maker.
Yeah, and I can say it's electromagnetic because I can identify streamline patterns with respect to it that I knew were what we call potential lines, and that says it was electrical. Somebody comes along and says, well, now where would you manufacture one that's 2.5 Earth lengths long? And that's a hard question to answer. However, if you think of it in terms of its living entity, this is another kind of thing that we've got in our universe, and it can grow and grow and grow and grow. Okay, but if there are craft, there are beings. Okay, people have asked me about, I call them vehicles. Okay. Right. No, I did not call them objects. That was too neuter for me. Okay. I had a Stanford professor say, you ought to call them objects. No. They have all of the...
We would have to do a segment on this.
Blue, the other just like a missile or anything like that. So that much we can say about them, for sure. Okay. So I'm calling them in.
Okay. So are you not positing the idea that those vehicles contain, beings who are...
I have to say, I have seen so many fucking interviews in this, living room with her fucking curtains and this fireplace. I have seen way too many Project Camelot interviews already. But I am curious to try to go through the entire Project Camelot archive. I'm interested to see what I would learn.
Yeah. Maybe like us?
Yeah, I only going along with government images. And if you want to know about people kind of thing, there is the ship that picked up the Voyager capsule at Alameda, the naval shipyard. And they have a picture there of, I think it's we call them flight with bugs and beetle on. But anyway, there's one image there that shows black people getting off.
So people with dark skin getting off.
Not dark, black.
Black skin.
Really black. Yeah.
Were they tall?
Yes.
Very tall.
Yeah.
How tall? Do you know?
Well, we got out the doorway. I don't know how high that is.
Buddy, you're in a living room. Use a fucking tripod.
Well, what,
Say 7 feet would be probably conservative, isn't it?
have you heard about Clark McClellan's statement about that?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Have you ever been in touch with him?
No.
No?
I have tried to stay independent and not be affected by others' opinions.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that we're communicating with them? Have you had any evidence of that?
Oh, no, we are not capable of doing that. SETI has tried to communicate with extraterrestrials, and they haven't done it yet. They have chosen the type of person, the type of entity that they want to communicate with is somebody that knows how to build radio.
Right.
That constrains them in their thinking immensely.
Now, eventually, when the Cassini probe was sent to Saturn in 1997, it was able to pick up more detailed images of the planet, with it being a lot more advanced than Voyager. And when they captured the Cassini images of Saturn's rings, they saw that what was causing the divisions in the rings was actually Saturn's moons. Because Saturn has a lot of moons. There's at least 82 that they know of so far. And some of these moons actually create these divisions in the rings.
Yeah,
usually by pulling different pieces of the rings into their gravitational field. And remember, one of the two main divisions where Norman Berggren said he saw the evidence of those vehicles, the Inky division in Saturn's A ring. They also refer to it as Inky's Gap. And remember, this is a division in one of Saturn's 3 main rings. And what they found through Cassini was that Inky's division, or Inky's Gap, was being caused by the moon, Pan. It's actually located inside of the gap. And it just kind of orbits around this part of the rings and keeps this gap open. This 200-mile wide division. And apparently this thing is moving fast. They estimate it to be orbiting around Saturn at about 42 miles per hour. And again, as it moves through, it keeps this division open and creates the Inky Gap. And NASA is actually referring to this thing as the god of the gap, because of course it's named after the god Pan. And they say that they named it after the god Pan because he was a god of the wild and a shepherd, and the moon Pan kind of acts like a shepherd, forcing all those ring particles out of the way to create that division. But really, think about what they're saying. The moon Pan is creating the Inky division. Remember Pan, the goat, and Inky, the fish. The goat fish, the astrological symbol for Capricornus.
Jesus
you back to
fucking
Saturn.
Christ.
And remember, the goatfish is also the symbol of Inky, one of the oldest gods in the Sumerian pantheon. And according to the Sumerian mythology, the god responsible for creating human beings.
He just,
now again, think about it.
everything
Pan is
fucking links. I can't
Inky.
stop him.
And when you look at Pan itself, out of all of Saturn's moons, Pan is one of the smallest moons. It's literally only 8 miles wide, but it still has this huge effect on Saturn's rings.
Huge
And it's also one of the most oddly shaped moons. It's got that weird shape to it. Some people say it looks like a walnut or a ravioli, but really take a good look at this thing. To me, it looks a lot like a mutated version of Saturn. It looks like the planet surrounded by its rings in a much more mutated form. I mean, put the moon Pan side by side with the planet Saturn, and you can see it. It's like a mutated version of Saturn. The spherical planet, the rings, it's got all those same features, just in a mutated form. But it's got that exact same formation to it. Now, remember again what they're saying. Pan is causing the Inky division. And remember, Pan is going to lead you back to Satan. And all of this stuff dealing with Satan and Saturn, the 3 sixes, the black sun, even the sabbatic goat, the Baphomet, all of this stuff is going to always lead you back to the oppression of black people. And
What? What? Bro, what? What are we, what are we, I thought we were talking about the planets. I don't know anymore.
where did that oppression come from? White
It came from the planet Saturn.
People. And of course, we know race is not real. It's an illusion, a very strong illusion, but it is an illusion. And how do we get these quote unquote races? From mutations within the human DNA. We are all mutations of the original human beings. And quote unquote white people are nothing more than mutations of quote unquote black people. Remember, you've got that MC1R gene that produces eumelanin, or black and brown skin. And when that MC1R gene is blocked, you get pheomelanin, a mutation in the human genome that ultimately leads to white skin. And then look at that moon, Pan, again. It's like a mutation of Saturn.
How did we
And this
get
mutation
here?
of Saturn is creating the Enki division. And remember again, Enki in the mythology is the creator of human beings. So it's literally like they're saying Pan, or this mutation, is causing a division in the human race, black versus white, the divide of the races. And this whole thing is being driven by the energy of the god Pan, that satanic low vibrational energy. And when you look at the symbol of the goatfish, you can see that the goat is at the head and the fish is at the tail. So it's pretty much the same message. Pan is ruling Enki, or in other words, Satan is ruling humanity through division. And remember, with the theory of Yakub, you have that idea that this...
Fuck! God fucking damn it. That's the... Oh, he brought up the big head scientists. I lose. I said... Oh my god, that was my drink condition. I cannot fucking believe this bullshit. This absolute fucking bullshit. This man has... Every time I say, don't bring up this or I'll drink, he fucking does it. This video is prescient. This video... The conspirasphere inside my brain knows what he is going to say before he can even begin to put the picture together. We're just missing transvestigations and lizard people, and I'm gonna do a shot. I am so upset right now. So fucking mad. You cannot bring up fucking Yakub.
Wasn't by accident. That this division was literally manufactured. And remember, with Enki, you've got those two separate creation stories. The black-headed people
I need to go
and
pee
mankind.
again.
And then you've got Norman Bergman saying that the ringmakers of Saturn are creating the Enki division. And also the Cassini division. And when NASA sent that probe through the Cassini division, they figured out that it was the moon Mimas causing the division. Now, Mimas isn't even that close to the Cassini division. And it's another really small moon, just like Pan. But it has such a strong gravitational pull that it actually creates this gap from a distance. And remember, it's creating the largest gap in Saturn's rings. And Mimas is pretty popular because it looks just like the Death Star from Star Wars. But what's interesting is that Mimas was apparently not even discovered until 1980. And Star Wars was released in 1977. And so, you know, the official word is that it was just this coincidence that the Death Star just so happened to look a lot like this moon of Saturn, Mimas. But it's crazy. If you look at this moon and you look at the Death Star, the resemblance is undeniable. So if they didn't base the Death Star off of Mimas, then that's a pretty huge coincidence. And remember, in the original Star Wars, the Death Star is built by the Empire, which is led by Darth Vader. Now remember, when Star Wars was originally released, it was released as a single film. It was a low-budget movie, and there was no anticipation of this thing turning into what it became. And so that original story was supposed to be it. And remember, that original story was about this powerful Force user, Darth Vader, dressed in all black, leading an army of stormtroopers going from planet to planet, attempting to conquer each planet. And then when the second movie, The Emperor Strikes Back, came out, and they introduced the snowtroopers, it's like they were just giving it to us in plain sight. Now, some of you might think I'm reaching with this one, and some of you might be seeing what I'm seeing, but I think the key is the Death Star. That links all of this back to Saturn, the ring makers, and everything else. Remember, again, Shani has that characteristic of testing you, literally creating obstacles and adversaries for you to work your way through and to continue to grow and to ascend. And now just think about that from the aspect of the ring makers creating divisions in Saturn's rings. And again, Mimas, aka the Death Star, is creating the largest division in Saturn's rings. Now remember, they recorded those radio emissions coming from Saturn. The Cassini probe started detecting these radio emissions coming from Saturn all the way back in 2002. And at this point, the probe was still millions of miles away from the planet. But even being that far away, it was still able to detect these radio emissions. And again, they noticed that the radio waves were constantly changing, going higher and lower and transmitting at different speeds. And they found that the variations in the radio waves were actually being controlled by the vortexes on the northern and southern hemisphere.
Why is Darth Vader here? I walk away for 5 seconds and Darth Vader is here? I have to plug in my headphones. You can see they're blinking red. Why is Darth Vader here? I didn't know. It's okay. I'm a professional. I can do this. I'm a professional.
Spheres of the planet, that each hemisphere was sending out different signals at different rates, and that each hemisphere has these auroras that extend out from these vortexes and emit these different radio waves. And eventually, when the Cassini probe moved in on Saturn for the final time in 2017, the probe got closer to the planet than it had ever been. And this is when they realized that those radio waves were actually moving between the planet Saturn and one of its moons, Enceladus. And these radio waves were literally moving in a circuit
really
from the planet to the moon and from the moon to the planet, back and forth. And they realized that this circuit was actually a magnetic field, and that it was literally electromagnetic energy moving between Saturn and this moon. And Enceladus is another really small moon, not as small as Pan or Mimas, but still small enough for the entire moon to fit inside the United Kingdom. And almost every inch of the exterior of the moon is almost completely covered in ice. But on the inside of the moon is supposed to be this huge ocean.
This huge ocean.
91% water.
I fucking
and a good
love
bit of this
how
water,
he says huge.
along with carbon, nitrogen,
He
and
says
methane,
it like Donald
actually
Trump. He
gushes
says
out
huge.
from this moon and actually orbits around Saturn. And they say that all these particles actually creates Saturn's E-ring. That once all of those particles orbit around the planet and spread out, it creates a band that forms the E-ring. And because Enceladus is constantly spewing out these particles, it's also constantly feeding the E-ring and maintaining that ring. And out of all of Saturn's rings, the E-ring sits the farthest out from the planet, and it kind of encircles all the rest of the rings and the planet. And it's actually the widest ring and the largest ring. So it's almost like a barricade surrounding the rest of the rings and the planet. And again, this E-ring, this final band or this final ring stretching out from Saturn, is being formed by the moon Enceladus, which is also constantly moving this electromagnetic energy back and forth between itself and the vortexes on Saturn's north and south poles. And again, when they compressed that electromagnetic energy and converted it into radio waves, they were able to hear what these emissions sounded like. And they literally described the sounds as eerie. And when you listen to what these radio emissions sound like, that's a pretty good description. They are bizarre. And you gotta understand that every celestial body
for us, coward.
in space is supposedly giving off some sort of sound. But there is nothing in space that sounds more unsettling than what is coming from Saturn.
Spooky. What time do I work tomorrow? I should probably know that before I stay up all night streaming. What the fuck, bro? Alright, I'm 1 to 7. We're good. I don't have to be up till 11. Bro, what the fuck? They're all creepy.
So needless to say, there's something really strange going on with these radio emissions. And remember, this is electromagnetic energy flowing from the planet Saturn to this moon and back, and being controlled and manipulated by these vortexes on the northern and southern hemispheres of the planet. It's almost like they're literally tuning this energy to different frequencies. And then that energy is flowing outward in a circuit. It's literally like a signal being transmitted. And here's what's crazy. If you look at the traditional symbol used for a radio signal, with the antenna and the radio
I liked
waves
when it went
spreading out of the antenna. It looks a lot like Saturn and its rings. When you look at the main source of the antenna and those radio waves expanding from that source, it's basically like you're looking at Saturn from an overhead view, the planet and its rings, with the planet being the main source of that antenna and the planet's rings being those radio waves emitting from that antenna. And then you've got that tower elevating that antenna and helping to send those signals out into the atmosphere. And remember what they said about that vortex on Saturn, that it's possible that it could be towering above the clouds of Saturn. And they estimate it to be hundreds of kilometers tall, at least 190 miles high. So just think about that hexagon towering out from the planet and sending out those signals, or maintaining Saturn's rings. Remember, those vortexes are linked to the moon Enceladus, which is maintaining that E-ring. And remember, that E-ring surrounds all the rest of the rings and the planet. And it's also continuously being sent that electromagnetic energy from these vortexes. That's a lot of energy. And where is it going? Possibly to the rings, but is it going anywhere else? Well, remember, the E-ring is the farthest ring from the planet. And so you got to wonder, is that energy or those signals being transmitted somewhere else? Remember, whenever you see Saturn in astrology or even dealing with the god Shani, Saturn is always connected to the Earth. Whenever you're dealing with Saturn, you're also always dealing with the Earth. Now, remember, the moon Mimas is causing the largest division in Saturn's rings. And the thing about Mimas is that they believe that there might actually be an ocean from here inside the core of that moon. And the reason why is because of the way that it orbits Saturn, because it has one of the weirdest orbits of any moon. It orbits Saturn through a rocking motion called libration. So when it orbits, it literally looks like it's rocking back and forth. And they describe it as being similar to the way that a pendulum swings. And they say that this moon is tidally locked to the planet Saturn. So it's permanently facing the planet as it orbits around the planet in that rocking motion, like a pendulum. Now remember, for a long time, pendulums were used inside clocks. The pendulum would hang at the end of the clock and swing back and forth.
We're going to literal pendulums now?
It would swing from left to right over and over. And each time, it would go from left to right or right to left in the exact same amount of time with every swing. And that pendulum was used to help that clock stay in perfect time. And you pretty much see the same concept with the metronome. You know, that little device that musicians used to use when they were practicing music. It's got that pendulum on it that rocks back and forth in perfect intervals to help musicians keep time while they play. And again, you got the moon, Mimas, rocking back and forth like a pendulum as it orbits Saturn. And again, has such a strong gravitational pull that it creates the largest division.
I'm incredulously silently.
A full orbit for Mimas takes 23
I'm watching
hours.
The metronome.
So basically, one day on Mimas would equal out to 23 hours. And of course, 1 day on Earth is 24 hours. Or at least that's what we've been told. But in actuality, one Earth day is only 23
but I can beat the
hours.
shit out of both of them.
It only takes 23 hours for the Earth to make a full rotation. So we've got the Earth making a full rotation every 23 hours.
I'm sorry, what?
And we've got this moon, Mimas, swinging like a pendulum while orbiting Saturn every 23 hours and creating the law.
No, because 23 hours and 56 minutes is not...
largest gap in Saturn's rings, as Saturn sends out and receives back these electromagnetic radio emissions. So as crazy as it sounds, it's almost like we have time itself being broadcast from Saturn. Remember, in the Greek mythology, Chronos was the god of time.
Oh my
and even in magic,
God,
the
it
energies
all
of Saturn are going to lead
comes
you
back.
to time. And remember, the goddess Kali, or she who is black, having that attribute of time. And all of this is starting with those vortexes on Saturn.
Say Kali Yuga. You fucking piece of shit. Alright, we're in the last leg. The longest
so you
phase.
Have the vortexes on the northern and southern hemispheres of Saturn, shaped like hexagons. And remember, with a hexagon, you have 6 sides, 6 vertices.
No, you don't understand. It's not
so 3
bupkis.
sixes. And
this was all just the introduction to this hour and 52-minute video.
So remember, with carbon-12, you have 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. So again, 3 sixes.
1,800
And remember, about 98.9% of all organic life on Earth is based on carbon-12.
Yeah.
So that's 98.9.
Yeah. All right, let's take a meme break. Let's do, Alright, let's do a public freakout. Oh, 10 hours ago. Let's go. If you have a suggestion, go ahead and post it.
I will yell at you. Walking. What's crazy? There's no dog on the grass. Oh my gosh. Keep filming. We can be here all day. You're overreacting, Karen. The dog is not on a leash. And, oh, you can't read English, apparently. Let's go read. Why? Because I'm Asian? Are you racist? Are you racist? Are you fucking racist? Oh, apparently you don't have to do anything that Americans have to do. Okay, so you can't read. Why don't you go yell at other people that have dogs on the grass?
Where is this?
The word you say. Because apparently you don't know that you have to have a leash on your dog. You.
Here, it's like every single day, you guys, and this is what I complain about all the time. Look, what's his name? What's your name? Alex? Yeah, your name's Alex, and I'm gonna be talking to your manager. This guy called me sir. This happens every day. Everywhere I go, I get called sir. I'm so sorry. Why would you call a chick big ass tits? Fucking. Why would you call? No, stop trying to gaslight trans people and tell us that.
Stop trying to gaslight trans people.
Crazy. You need to be mindful of other people and stop being a scumbag. And you're a liar. I heard you. Fucking gaslighting trans people.
They're fucking gaslighting trans people.
Did you call me sir again? What was that? You said goodnight, sir? Alex, I'm gonna be talking to corporate about you. Fucker. Okay? That's bullshit.
Does Alex look like he gives a half a fuck?
Yeah, and I'm walking out and you're like, have a good night, sir? What the is that? No, you don't do this to trans people. This is discrimination. No, this is discrimination. I'm done with it.
This has to be a skit. Someone finally got off Twitter after being told to touch grass for the 50th time, and they walked immediately into this fucking KFC.
Talk to corporate about this. You don't harass trans people. Hey, you know, it's one of the stupid things when you're catching Karens. You call me sir, and you're talking to calling me sir on the way. This is transphobic harassment. You're a bigot. Alright, Alex, you know what?
You're a fucking bigot?
He admits twice calling me sir. No, you lied about the first one. No, you called me sir twice. Twice. Yeah, but you shouldn't harassing people with slurs. It's a slur. Do you not understand? It's like if you call the person that call her the N-word. Don't.
It's like if you call the person that call her the N-word.
I have the right to be pissed about it. You did. You did, you liar. And I'm gonna hold you accountable. Cis people need to be held accountable for how they treat trans people. And I'm not gonna put up with this shit anymore. You're don't call me bro. Stop throwing slurs at me.
Bro is a slur now.
Bro, you know me. Oh, you want to flash gang signs at me? Alright. Yeah, cross.
I like that the entire KFC team came together to form a human wall to block this man's.
Do you want to talk about sucking now? Why is it that you fucking weird cis people are so obsessed with sex? You have fucking discrimination going on, and your brain goes fucking. Don't fucking call me sir. This is transphobia right here at the pub. Yeah, you know, you heard blasphemy. What the fuck? You.
I said it's cool.
We spa, so you don't. So it's okay. I just want to be clear with you. It's okay. It's okay for a man to go into the women's section, show his penis around the other women, young little girls underage. Your spa, we spa, condone that. Is that what you're saying? Like I asked.
What? What?
I'm gonna fix you something to eat.
Yeah. Is it ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll be right back.
So
I'm gonna get food.
He can stay there. He can stay there. What's sexual orientation? It lets me know he's a man. He's a man. He is a man. He is not no female. He is not a female. He is not a female. Hold on. He is not a female, sweetie. Okay? Girls down there, other women who are highly offended for what they just saw. And you did nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, you sided with him. So We Spa is in agreement with men that just say they are a woman and they can go down there with their penis and get into the women's section. Is that what you're saying? What really? What law? What law? So women can go into the men's with their breasts. Okay. Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't come back either. Yeah, get your money back. You got a man with his penis talking about he's a woman. He ain't no woman. Yeah, give her money back. There's no such thing as transgender. He has a... Okay? He has a penis. His penis is hanging out. Okay, no, I'm not one. Actually, I'm a woman who knows how to stand up and speak up for my right. As a woman, I have a right to feel comfortable without a man exposing himself, okay? No, you go somewhere else. Okay, so that's right. No, he's not a transgender. He has a penis, just like you do. Are you? No. Yeah. Okay, it's not okay. It's not okay. Okay, that's traumatizing to see that. I'm a woman. I think this is a place right here, I'm told, only for women. So how dare you sit up here and tell me I don't have a right as a woman to defend? I'm telling you, he has a penis, a full and testicles, okay? And I don't care what it's a man. You got one? You're a man, okay?
And if we went into the men's section with our anatomy, that would be...
Well, it would probably, but you might not like women, so it might not, okay? And we don't know. But for me and for a lot of other women, they do not feel comfortable, and it's not okay. Okay? So, well, yeah, you're sorry. You should be, sweetie, and you're out of alignment, and this is not right. I can tell you that much. All right? And I know you're out of order. Yeah, it must be hard. It must be hard being a real man, huh? Try it. So, like I said, I want every woman...
I only vaguely was aware of the We Spa thing.
Okay, well, I don't care what the security guard. He's just security. Yeah. Okay, well, no, he's sitting in there. Okay, well, security.
No. He doesn't want to.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying he should have not been allowed.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. We know that.
Exactly. Exactly.
No,
so,
we knew that.
Do you see this, sir? I don't... Yeah. This is crazy.
Please just have my shit back.
Yeah, dude. The police are on their way, though. So I don't know who the fuck this person... He followed me on the way home. Like, this is weird. Dude, I don't know. Like, you follow... Yeah, no.
It's fine. Just go Roman and, unisex everything.
This is weird. Why did you follow me home, man? This is weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know who it is, but the police are on their way.
That one was dumb.
Why are you at my house? Why are you at my house? We cannot, we're doing social distancing. We cannot have you here.
We're socially distancing.
Can you please leave? Can you please leave my house?
She's technically in your on your personal property. You can call the cops. I would. She can do whatever she's doing from the fucking sidewalk. Watch me get fucking content ID'd for this shitty cartoon in the background. That is a nice lawn. It's a cute fence.
Can you guys turn that down, please? Turn it down, please.
Like, I don't know what this lady wants, but I'm on the lady inside's side right now. Unless she's like a census official. What the fuck is happening?
I know, wait.
Okay, that was dumb.
Sorry, folks. We're gonna have to deep.
Yeah. Send me a link. Show me something.
Oh my God, woman, get off the. Are you serious? Oh my God, woman, get off the plane.
We don't have class
No,
today.
get off the plane. Please listen to flight.
No, we've been already on the plane for like
Listen to
an
that
hour.
one.
Today's secret ingredient is
Have you do you watch Iron Chef? My parents were super into this show.
Canadian lobster. Nice.
Every time, that's his face.
Canned tuna. Caviar. Caviar, baby. Cucumber.
The eyebrows, though. Cucumber.
Eggs. Fruit cake.
Oh no.
A game day party.
What? Cutthroat Kitchen is funny.
Gruyere cheese. Hawaiian snapper.
Snapper!
Hot dogs. Jerky.
Oh, yeah.
Kale.
Oh. Okay. The dude's face, just for an instant.
Mexican chocolate. Mint.
Mint? Oh, I was just thinking to myself. Like, obviously he has to be, like, in the mirror in his fucking trailer, like, mint! Like, just getting ready, like, hyping himself up.
Mozzarella.
I loved him.
Okra.
Okra!
Oktoberfest.
What?
Oktoberfest.
Oh, Oktoberfest. So just beer, but different.
Parmigiano Reggiano. Passion fruit.
Oh, it's passion fruit. That's in my beer. Peas.
Pistachios. Plum. Quail.
Rhubarb.
Rhubarb.
He just gives that fucking look where he's like, Who's reacting?
Rhubarb.
And they put, like, the sword swipe sound effect on it. Oh, I love it. It's fantastic.
Sausage. Scary combinations.
What?
Sea whistle. Salmon. Seaweed. Sesame. Short ribs.
Well, basically, if you come across something you've never cooked before, you have to use your chef experience to, like, taste it and think about what it can replace in something you already know how to cook.
Tamarind.
Moss!
Tea.
What? Oh, tea.
Tea. Tequila and tortillas. Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving! It's the whole ingredient, just Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving.
Tilapia. Trout. Wild boar.
Alright, so, okie doke.
All done.
Okay.
Are you?
Okay, let's see. Let's do number 2. And then we'll go back to our crazy shit.
What? Is the final call just me or for you guys? Alright. I'm just curious, like.
Well, you got another actually, it states that as long as you can maintain 6 feet distance, you don't have to wear the mask. But you guys don't if you want to step within 6 feet of me, I'll gladly put on the mask. Okay. So would you like to do that?
I mean, I feel like you guys are within less than 6 feet of each other.
You're the one that approached us, so would you
like to keep the distance? I'm 6 feet away though.
Okay, now we're 6 feet away and I don't have to wear my mask.
You could probably wear a mask in a global.
You're the person that calls someone, you know what I mean? When someone sells like water bottle on the streets, you're the person that calls them. That's what you want. Alright, Carrie, you're like the middle version of Carrie.
Oh.
Hold on, what's your name?
Yeah, you know that. I'm ready to say.
Okay,
yeah, have a nice day, man.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah, you too. Take care, Karen.
Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you for protecting us during a pandemic.
Angry boy. Fuck.
Excuse me, but you did say that she needs to go back to her country. What is that?
I'm really hoping that, like, after I've gotten a little bit of, like, forearm and bicep muscle going, my elbows will stop popping all the time. I don't know what causes that, but I'm hoping it stops.
Excuse me, this is what this whole world...
White people are not from this country. So serve her. So serve her racist ass.
You don't tell... No. Continue serving, continue serving.
You need to leave. You're not a part of this. You need to leave. You're not a part of this. No. No, you do not come in here and use the F word and swear and call me a B-I-T-C-H.
I never even said that.
I said she is, and you're not a part of it.
that word.
So you get out of here. I know. I said she is, and that's why she's leaving. So you will leave too.
No.
So you will leave too.
Who I am. You told her to go back to her country where she's from. Yeah.
No, my elbows will pop forever.
Where are your ancestors from? They're not from this country. Bitch, you better go back to where you're from.
You just walked into her. Excuse me.
Oh, get her.
Bitch, you just touched me. Oh my God.
Yep.
Ladies.
Yeah, you pushed her and she smacked you. That was self-defense on her part. Nope.
Vehicles, you are repairing other people's vehicles in your neighborhood, in your house, and that's against the bylaws. All right? So.
This is my vehicle right here, and this vehicle behind me is mine, and that one is mine, and that one is also. Yes, they are.
If I were to run a vehicle check on that,
you can do whatever it is you want to do, lady. Okay, but do me a favor, mind your own business and stay on your side of the street.
you're bringing down the property values of everybody around here.
Is it really me, or is it you?
You can do anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to.
You look like a crazy person right now. I want you to know.
You look like a crazy person.
Okay.
You look like a crazy person.
Keep it up. Keep it up. It's called harassment.
Oh, what do you do when you go out at 4 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the morning?
I work at night. I work at night.
Well, that's nice.
Okay.
I don't know what you do.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
You're right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
To me
I work at night. Okay.
The fact is, that is a car right here. That is a.
All right, I'll try that.
Some kind of a bought car.
Didn't you buy your car?
You buy it?
Some kind of a bought car. Didn't you buy your car?
Yes.
All these cars in your name?
Yes.
Would
yes.
you be willing to give me the information on?
I don't have to give you nothing.
Well,
okay.
I guarantee you. You're in here.
Well,
you're repairing vehicles, and
I
it's
guarantee
against the
you.
bylaws.
No, that's a hobby of mine. I repair my own stuff.
It's not a hobby, it's a business. And you're not supposed to have it as a business.
I don't know anything about anybody's business but my own business. I mind my own business. And why don't you mind your own business? Okay?
No.
Okay. Why don't you mind your own business?
Read the bylaws.
Why don't you go look up the definition of harassment? Okay. No. Hey, friend. Hey, friend. Is she with you? Can you grab her, man? No. Please.
No.
Please.
I own the house.
Okay, great. Great. I own my house too. I own my house too. Okay. All right. That's fine. That's fine.
You're not supposed to be having a business at your house.
All right. Fine. Fine. And you know what? You're not supposed to be harassing your neighbors. You're not supposed to be harassing your neighbors.
I'm not harassing.
Yeah, you are. You are. You are. You are. You are. I don't have any kind of business running out of here. I'm not running any kind of business out of here. Okay? All right? Have a great
Come
day.
get your mans. I feel like he is running a business out of here, but I also don't give a shit. Like, if dude's got a fucking side hustle, what's the fucking problem?
License plate number T is in Tom, B is in Victor.
He's an Uber Eats driver.
895. It is
Oh my God.
Black Toyota.
Are you for real?
No, he's trespassing. And
He's not trespassing. He's dropping off for Uber Eats. Are you dumb or are you dumb?
This is actually a condo. But he wouldn't answer me when I asked him what he was doing.
And he don't have to.
And his girlfriend over here.
Yeah.
She keeps harassing me, so I can't talk to
Ain't nobody fucking harassing you, dude.
Yeah, there's a female here. And
Exactly.
I live here. Okay, then.
And then there's I take care of this property. I make sure that we don't have all kinds of stuff happening.
Well, I just told you he's an Uber Eats driver.
Yourself. All you had to do was tell me what you were doing.
Imagine that happening here.
Yeah, because somebody cares about the building. I've lived here for a long time. I'm an owner here. I can do whatever I want if somebody's trespassing.
I can do whatever I
I don't
want.
want to talk to you.
You're the one that walked up to me right now.
No, you didn't. You came up in my face when you were talking to me.
And then I walked over here and you're walking
Go back to
Listen,
Mexico.
I said, excuse me.
Go back, wherever you're from.
I said, excuse me. Don't be rude.
You're the one that's rude.
No, I said,
Yes, you
excuse me.
are.
I'm trying to buy
You're in
something.
America.
So?
You're in America.
You're in America.
So what?
That's none of your business. Stay out of it.
I don't need to stay out of it.
I said,
It's
excuse
loud enough
me.
for everybody to hear. Stop being
Calling me ignorant.
Oh,
Yes.
my
All this
goodness.
Mexico and all that stuff.
Oh
yes,
my goodness.
absolutely.
You are very rude.
No, you're the one that's rude.
I said, excuse me, because I'm trying to grab my medicine.
You told me, you know what you told me, and I ain't
Yes,
gonna
I
put up
said,
with it.
if you don't like it, I'm
Just go
sorry.
on. Just go on. Just go on.
They're all so shriveled
No,
and
I'm not gonna
trampy.
get out of here. No, I'm not.
you
Because
gonna
this is
stand
my
here and
country.
argue?
Yes, this is my
That's not
country.
your
Oh,
country.
yes, it is.
No, we don't
Oh,
want
yes,
you
it
here.
is. I don't care.
We don't want you.
I don't care what you want or not.
We do want you here.
Leave me
That's
alone.
not true.
No.
How rude. How rude.
Give her to
It's Walmart. It's always Walmart.
Kill her.
tell her.
No, ma'am.
Oh,
Tell her.
It's
I
inappropriate.
said, excuse
Speak
me.
for the store.
I'm not here for the store.
You're in the store.
I'm spending money in the store.
So am I.
That's correct.
Oh no, she's crying.
Go. Get out of here.
How rude.
She just wants her Prilosec. Get out of the fucking way.
Shut up. Are you... Does she honestly still have a right to
No,
be
ma'am.
here? Okay.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave, ma'am. This is inappropriate.
It's not my fault. She started it.
I did not do anything.
You're gonna make her leave too?
Well, you're just causing a scene in the store.
I'm not. She is.
By
I
what?
did
Did you
not.
watch it? You weren't even.
I heard you from
she
the office.
is. That's because she was mouthing me.
No, I said, excuse me.
So don't tell me it's my fault.
And you said, every time I'm on an aisle, people just come near
I wasn't
me.
talking to you.
And I said,
but
I'm
you made it
sorry.
your business.
I said, I'm sorry. If you don't like it, I need to get my medicine.
You guys have your card? Well, we cannot wear it. Yeah, I see.
Oh, she's got the eye tattoo. Oh, she's in the Illuma Satanati.
Cannot discriminate against our religious beliefs or health condition.
Sorry, the transaction didn't go through completely.
Oh.
It's my favorite water here.
Oh, yeah? Oh, so now make sure talking, make sure you kind of, oh yeah, you can, so you can see it. Perfect. Yeah, turn it
There
on.
you go, that's better.
Ladies, I'm glad you came to film us. I'm glad you came to show everyone that we do have a fast face mask mandate. I appreciate you guys' your strength, but we do have rules and regulations at this location. And please require masks. So if you're not going to wear a mask, let me finish. Sure. So if you're not going to wear a mask, I will call the authorities to come remove you. If you'd like to order with us, we can take your order outside, and we'll bring it out for you. That is what we can provide for you.
Well, are you aware that you are discriminating against our
Ma'am,
people?
you can talk to Peace Coffee and see about that.
I'm right here.
I am not in charge of Peace Coffee as a corporation. So you
Oh yeah, I've had to deal with that. It's not that bad.
I am required to have everyone wear a face mask for the safety of my employees, for the safety of all of my customers.
Do you realize that goes against the current CDC
I'm
regulations?
sorry, if you go anywhere, even to the
realize that goes against the
I just went to Whole Foods. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm not in agreement with the mask mandate, but like I'll wear it to make other people around me feel safer and not cause a fucking scene. You know what I mean? Like, it's just easier to keep one in your back pocket and put it on when you go into a place that expects you to have it on, and then take it off when you're done. It's a 5-minute, like, it's not even inconvenient. It's literally nothing. But these people need to go around proving a point about how, ooh, we're so America, or whatever the fuck their point is. And it's tedious. It's tedious.
The current CDC regulations say that you are not to employ masks.
You can call Peace and find some.
Show it to her. It's right here. Show it to her.
I can send it.
Exactly. Can we get 2 chai iced teas to go? Oh no, this is gonna get me copyright claimed.
Oh my god, man.
You laughing now? Keep fucking laughing, bro. You wanna know why? You wanna know fucking why? Oh my god, keep fucking laughing. Cause you black bitch. You fucking black. You black hanging out with rich white kids. And that's your problem.
Oh
and
no.
That's your problem. Oh,
Interracial friendship.
That's your motherfucking problem. That you're no fuck you. Oh, I'm getting you pissed out. I'm getting you fucking pissed out. Because that is your fucking shit. I'm getting you fucking pissed
What drive-through is this?
Shit out, bro. Hey, check your shit out, bro.
Is this a KFC? No, this has to be a Taco Bell. Oh, it's a Popeyes.
No fucking no.
Miss, what are you angry about?
Is you ignorant white fucks. You little millennials sitting here videotaping my ass.
How old are you?
Oh my god. You're so, you little.
She's just...
Oh my god, nah. You fucking millennials is the best thing that just hit the fucking joint, dude. Fuck you. And fuck you. And the fact that he eats
She's mad because they're an interracial friend group. Oh, she's so fucking drunk. Okay. Alright, I think we've sufficiently recuperated.
Percent of the material world being based on 3 6s. And then remember those vortexes, which are shaped like hexagons, are sending out those signals to the moon Enceladus, which is creating Saturn's largest ring, the one that's stretching out the farthest away from the planet. And remember,
the
they say
water that makes you a half fish, half human, which also links you to the planet Enceladus, which also links you to Saturn, which links you to the black cubes, which links you to Islam.
Waves are being manipulated
yeah,
by these hexagons.
Ready.
These radio waves are literally being distorted by 3 6s. And remember, these radio waves are electromagnetic energy. So it's literally like you have this energy of 666 being projected from Saturn. And again,
What? Okay. Alright, I wasn't ready for that line.
6 is going to take you to the composition of the majority of the physical world on the Earth. And remember Saturn's connection to the Earth. Everywhere you see Saturn, you always see the Earth. In Vedic astrology, the tarot, the zodiac, even alchemy. When you're dealing with Saturn, you're dealing with a heavy attachment to the Earth. And then think about what they said about those vortexes on Saturn again. That the vortexes on the northern and southern hemispheres were sending out mixed signals. That the northern region is sending out completely different emissions than the southern region. And again, remember, we're dealing with hexagons here, 3 6s. And those 3 6s can also be connected to carbon-12 with the 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. And with the proton, you have a positive charge. And then with an electron, you have a negative charge. Polar opposites. And again, think about it. They're saying that the north and south poles are sending out mixed signals, different opposing emissions, aka polar opposites, 2 opposing forms of energy coming from the same source. It's duality, negative, positive. And it's being projected out through these hexagons, or 3 6s,
of saying
which, once again,
the same
can be connected back to carbon-12, which makes up the majority of the material world, including us, human beings. We are carbon-based beings. So you would think we'd be a part of that 98.9% of everything physical being mainly based on carbon-12, which would mean that our physical bodies would be based on 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. 3 6s. And we know those 3 6s are attached to Satan, the devil, lower nature, low-level energy. But then on the other side of that, we have carbon-13, making up less than 1.1% of all the carbon in the physical world. And with carbon-13, you have 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 7 neutrons. So from carbon-12 to carbon-13, you have an increase in neutrons. Now, we know that every single atom is made of protons, electrons, and neutrons, with the neutron being one of the most important parts of that atom. Because at the center of every atom, you have a nucleus. And the nucleus is what holds that atom together. It keeps everything in place. It's basically the foundation of an atom. And the nucleus is formed by neutrons. When the neutrons group together in the center, they form the foundation of that atom, the nucleus. And again, when you go from carbon-12 to carbon-13, you get an increase in neutrons. So in other words, you get a stronger nucleus, a stronger foundation for that atom. And also notice you move away from 666 to 667. And again, we know 666 is pointing us to all this low energy, low vibration stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure we all know the verse in Revelation. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 603 score and 6. So 666. 666 is saying that this is the number of the beast, and that it's the number of a man. And when it comes to man or human beings, we know that that 666 is going to take us back to us being carbon-based life forms. And again, 98.9% of that carbon being carbon-12. 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. 666. It's talking about
what
these
does
human
that
bodies,
even mean
flesh
to
we are.
do
And
with
it's saying that
anything?
this is the number of the beast, this carbon-12 666. Because we know this material world and the full indulgence into this material world is going to lead you to Satan, giving fully into your root chakra, that red root chakra, aka the red devil, giving into all those things that tap into your lower nature, the lowest part of yourself, your basic instincts, your animal instincts, that beast inside of you, your carbon-12, 666. Just like they say, Satan is the god of this world, the god of the material world, aka most of the world is comprised of carbon-12, that 98.9% that is fully attached to this physical world, that 98.9% that makes up the majority of the material world around us, the 666, just like a hexagon with the 6 sides, 6 vertices, and 6 angles. And that hexagon in its third dimensional form
here at
becoming a cube.
episode
So you got
1.
this material world being represented by Satan, You got the hexagon in its third dimensional form, giving you a cube. Then you got all of this tying back to Saturn with those hexagons on Saturn. And remember, Saturn in alchemy is the black sun. So with human beings being mostly attached to carbon 12, and with carbon 12 giving you that 666,
everyone's a
that
Nazi.
animalistic lower nature, that beast within human beings, you can see it's basically that same representation of human beings being chained to that black cube of the thing.
Oh, we got
This is
dicks
what we're
on
getting with
stream
carbon
again.
12. It's human beings being attached to the material world that feeds into their lower nature, their animalistic desires. Remember that astrological symbol for Capricorn is the goatfish, with the goat at the head and the fish at the tail. The goat representing Satan.
I swear, we get dicks on stream every fucking stream.
Humanity. And all of this can be
How do I even manage to always have a dick on stream?
666, which is ultimately going to take you back to carbon 12. And then, of course, when you increase the foundation of that carbon atom, or when you increase the neutrons of that element that life is literally based off of, you get carbon 13. This higher form of carbon that's also this extremely rare and elusive form of carbon, making up less than 1.1% of the physical world. It's a very rare thing to find in the physical world, carbon 13. So you think there would also be a very rare amount of human beings that you could find possessing this carbon 13. And think about this, with carbon 13, you have the number 13. And think about that in the story of Jesus and the 12 disciples. You have 12 people following Jesus.
Excuse me, I'm in the lower right corner.
Like Jesus, following in his footsteps as his 12 disciples. So you got 12 disciples and you got Jesus. And together they form this group, which will make Jesus the 13th person in this group, number 13. And you got Jesus representing somebody striving to live a life detached from the material world, trying to live a righteous life while surrounded by a world that promotes the exact opposite, trying to be in the world but not of the world.
And
basically standing
you
out
can't
as a
call
very rare
Ashtar a
and different
dick.
person, a minority
He's the
amongst the majority,
commander
just like carbon
of
13, making up less than 1.1%
local
of the material
fleet
world. And remember, with
for
carbon 13, you
our
have a more
quadrant
balanced
of the
nucleus,
galaxy.
a stronger foundation, 7
Also,
neutrons.
he's
And when you look at the
ripped as
nucleus,
hell.
or that foundation,
He'll
you're going to see that it's not
destroy
just neutrons that form that nucleus, but in order to have a nucleus, you also need protons. And what is a proton?
You can call me a
positive
dick.
electrical
I'm a
charge,
dick, but
positive energy.
but
So
not
in order to create the
Ashtar.
nucleus, that foundation.
Ashtar's
you
a
need
special
positive energy,
boy.
and it comes together with the neutrons, which are pretty much what they sound like, neutral, not positive, not negative, but a perfect balance. And again, when you couple that perfect balance of those neutrons with the positive energy of those protons, you form the foundation of that atom, the nucleus. And of course, to complete that atom, you do need electrons, or a negative electrical charge, negative energy. And the electrons, or that negative energy, is going to surround that atom. But again, at its core, at the foundation of that atom, what is ultimately holding it together and giving it its strength is the neutrons, that perfect balance, and the protons, positive energy. So the nucleus, or the very heart of that atom, cannot be sustained without positive energy, without that positive energy helping to bring about that perfect balance. So you could kind of think of the proton like your higher mind, or your higher self, the positive side of yourself going up to the mind. And that positive side of yourself, your higher mind, leading the way and forming that balance within yourself, keeping everything else in check, including those electrons, that negative side of you, going down to your lower self, which represents the flesh and the material. So you can basically see that the atom is designed for the positive, the higher mind, to control and to keep in check the negative, the lower self, in an effort to keep that balance. So basically mind over matter. And even when you look at the structure of the atom, notice how the proton is closer to the neutron, or the neutral part of the atom, the balanced part of the atom, and how far away it is from those electrons, that negative energy. It's like the negative energy is necessary, but at a distance, away from the nucleus, away from what's actually keeping everything together, what's actually keeping everything balanced. Or you can look at it as the mind is separating itself from matter in order to create that balance. And again, we know that the neutron is that ultimate source of balance within that nucleus. The more neutrons you have, the stronger that nucleus becomes. So it would be safe to think that the more neutrons you have, the stronger that atomic structure becomes, giving that nucleus the strength to keep those protons at a distance from those electrons, or keeping the positive at a distance from the negative. Because you'd have to think that if you have protons and electrons that are moving in closer on each other within an atom, then you're dealing with an atom that is about to collapse on itself, an atom that is about to implode. You got a chaotic situation within the core of that atom. And again, the more neutrons you have, the less likely that atom is to self-destruct, because the more neutrons you have, the more balance you have. And again, when you look at carbon 12 and you look at carbon 13, you're getting a much stronger balance with carbon 13. The balance, or the neutrons, are higher than the protons and the electrons. But then if you notice with carbon 12,
what
those
does
neutrons,
any
or
of
that
this
balance,
have to do with
is on the same exact
anything?
level as the positive and negative energy. There's no distinction. There's no true order. Everything is on the same level. And of course, when you put them together, it's a frequency of 666, which is pointing back to the material, the physical, the lower self. But again, you've got carbon 13 giving you more of a balance, more of a capacity to be able to keep the negative at a safe distance from the positive. Or in other words, to be able to keep matter from taking over the mind. And remember, you can connect that 13 to Jesus. And remember the story of Jesus being tempted in the wilderness by the devil. The devil takes Jesus to the highest mountaintop, and he shows him all the kingdoms of the world. And he says, all of this,
Carbon
I own all
13, therefore... I don't get it. Carbon 13, therefore Jesus X Satan fanfiction? I don't get it. I don't fucking understand anything right now.
This whole world is mine, and I'll give all of it to you. The entire world. All you have to do is bow down and worship me. And Jesus basically told him to kick rocks, that he was not going to bow down and worship him, and that his focus was on God in heaven. And you can see the lesson in the story. So Jesus is basically being used to be an example of somebody that is detaching himself from the material world, somebody that's faced with all the temptations of the physical, the devil, and chooses to deny all of that and allow their higher self, God in heaven, to take control. And it's kind of a similar thing going on here with those neutrons, keeping those protons away from
anything to
those electrons, keeping a strong foundation, staying balanced in an effort to keep the positive or the higher mind in control of the negative, the flesh, the physical.
Sounds like a lot of hoopla.
Represents Jesus, and being like Christ, then that will leave carbon 12 to represent the Antichrist, or somebody going the opposite way of that example of Jesus, somebody giving fully into the material world, fully into the flesh. And it seems like it would be in our best interest to try to move from that carbon 12 to carbon 13, where you're getting that stronger foundation, that stronger balance, and break away from that 666. If you look out into society, there's so much negativity placed on this number 13. It's always looked at as this unlucky number. When you start
and put it in your food and replace all the carbon in your body with carbon 13, and that's gonna let you level up to the next vibrational level.
To all the superstitions, 13 is looked at as this number that should be avoided at all costs, and it's actually one of the bigger phobias out there, the fear of the number 13.
It's not. No, it's not. No one is fucking triskadelophobic. Stop it.
You got a lot of buildings out there that don't even have a 13th floor because of the fear of this number and because of people's attempts to try to avoid it. And it's a fear that goes way back, but nobody knows where it originally stemmed from. But whenever you see that number 13, you're usually going to see it connected to negativity, like Friday the 13th and stuff like that. But again, when we look at what 13 is pointing toward in human beings, it's definitely not something negative. I mean, it's the exact opposite. And again, that 13 can be connected to Jesus, with Jesus giving us that example of breaking away from the material world, living in the material world, but not becoming a slave to it, not allowing yourself to be chained to that black cube of the devil. And remember what Jesus said, no one gets to the Father except through me. So you can't get to God without going through Jesus first. Or in other words, you can't connect with your higher mind, the higher version of yourself, without following the example of Jesus. Remember, Jesus is God in human form, God in the flesh, a human being trying to show other human beings how to break their attachment to the material world and how to realize their full potential and to ultimately connect to God, to become one with God. Remember, he says, follow me.
Everything's connected, except the number 13. That's just a crazy superstition.
To reach the kingdom of heaven. And we know God is in heaven. So where is heaven? Where is God? Well, he told you, neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. So it's telling you God is within us. And how do you find God within you? Well, you follow Jesus. You go where Jesus was going, which was breaking away from the physical world and going into his higher mind, the kingdom of God. And what is the physical world? Well, 98.9% of it is 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons. 666. It's Satan, the material world. And so think about that story of Satan being cast down from heaven.
Oh my
Remember,
God.
Satan was in heaven with God before being cast down to the earth. But he wanted more acknowledgement. He wanted to be like God. He wanted more control in heaven. Now think about those positive protons having control within the nucleus, while those negative electrons sit on the outside. And then think about Satan being cast out and sent down to the lower realms, to the earth, where he is given control, just like the lower part of yourself, that part of you that is heavily connected to the flesh and to the things of the physical world. And just like Satan, if you allow it, it will try to take over the kingdom of heaven, aka your higher mind, and become God there too. And just like Satan and God cannot coexist together in heaven, in the same way those protons and those electrons cannot coexist together in the nucleus. In order for there to be balance, they have to be separated. And the protons that...
Is this how they teach chemistry in, like, Orthodox fucking Catholic schools? Is this how they do it? Where did this come from?
Positive energy, aka the higher mind, has to take control. Protons, electrons, positive and negative energy. You need both. But in order to build a strong foundation, you need the proper balance. With the positive, the higher mind, taking control and keeping the negative or the physical under control. Now remember, we got these hexagons on Saturn sending out these radio waves.
Now remember, back to episode 1. It's been 4 hours. Back to episode 1. We got the hexagons on Saturn.
And again, a hexagon is going to give you 666, which can connect to carbon 12, which also gives you 666. And then we've got all those connections between Saturn and Earth. And again, we know Saturn is sending out these radio emissions coming from these hexagons. And then we know that these radio emissions are linked to the E-ring, Saturn's largest visible ring, that's stretching out the farthest away from the planet, which is created by these hexagons interacting with one of Saturn's moons. And we know that the E-ring is stretching out pretty far from Saturn. Every 10 to 15 years, the Earth actually crosses paths with the E-ring. I mean, they say when it happens, it looks like Earth is at the very edge of this ring. So we know the E-ring has to be stretching out pretty far, considerably close to the Earth. I mean, you got that Cassini image of Earth being visible at a distance from the E-ring. I mean, it's like a speck, but you can still see how close the E-ring is in comparison to the Earth. So we know the E-ring has some distance to it, but the E-ring isn't actually Saturn's largest ring. There's actually an even larger ring that they say is created by Saturn's moon Phoebe, called the Phoebe ring. And they say that the Phoebe ring is actually Saturn's outermost ring that is larger than the E-ring, and that actually stretches out even farther than the E-ring. Now again, the E-ring is Saturn's largest visible ring, but they say that the Phoebe ring can't actually be seen with the naked eye, and that the only way that they were able to detect it was through infrared. Now they say that this ring is made of space dust that come from Saturn's moon Phoebe, but again, the only way this ring is visible is through infrared. So if it's only space dust, why can't it be seen with the naked eye? When you're dealing with infrared, you're talking about electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation sent out through radio waves.
Stop.
And we know that just behind the Phoebe ring,
don't.
behind the E-ring that's being formed by electromagnetic energy, radio waves being sent out by those hexagons on Saturn. And then think about it, if the E-ring is already so close to the Earth, it's visible from a distance, then just how close to the Earth do you think this Phoebe ring is? Remember, it can't be seen with the naked eye. And they haven't disclosed how far this ring actually stretches out. They say it's a new discovery and they're still learning things about it. But if it's larger than the E-ring and it's stretching out further than the E-ring, you have to assume that this thing is extremely close to the Earth. So again, where are these radio emissions from Saturn going? It seems like they are going to the Earth. And again, the radio emissions are coming from these hexagons. And these hexagons give you a symmetry of 666. And then we look at Earth and we can see that 98.9% of the Earth is composed of 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons. So it almost seems like that frequency of 666 is being sent from Saturn to the Earth. Remember, you're also getting those mixed signals from the northern and southern hemispheres, polar opposites, those two separate vortexes, giving off those two separate forms of energy being projected from the same source. So it's like the energy of duality, negative and positive, is also being sent out. And you got this energy being generated from within these hexagons. And from the word hexagon, you get the word hex. Now, this is interesting because in mathematics, the word hex means 6. But
yeah, because it's a 6-sided shape. Oh my god.
The word hex used outside of math is referring to witchcraft, spellcasting, as in placing a hex on someone, or in other words, placing a curse on someone. And this is a big thing in witchcraft. Hexing, casting spells, trying to manipulate other people's energy by sending a stronger and more persuasive energy in their direction. And it's not necessarily about saying hocus pocus and alakazam, brewing up magic potions, casting a spell.
Oh, isn't it? It isn't? No? Okay.
It can be as simple as to take control of somebody's mind, using persuasion to get somebody to put the ball and chain on their own mind and willingly give up control, even if they don't realize it. And remember, we can trace so many things back to Saturn and back to the hexagon or the hexagram, including a lot of these different religions. And of course, there's a lot of truth that you can find in the stories and parables that come from a lot of these religions. But the very structure of the religions that surround a lot of these teachings tends to ignore the things that point towards you doing inner work within yourself. The focus always seems to be on giving your energy away to something outside of you, giving all your energy up to a God. And what do they call it? The gospel, dedicating yourself to a God. But where did that word gospel come from? Well, when you look into it, it originally comes from the term God spell, literally, God spell. And we know what a God is, and we know what a spell is, a form of hexing used to manipulate and control something. And then you look at a lot of these different religions and how they have all these people giving up their energy to something outside of themselves. And then how all these religions connect back to the hexagon and back to the cube, unknowingly chaining themselves to that black cube of Saturn. Or in other words, they are under Saturn's hex. They are under the God spell. Instead of looking for God within themselves, like all these teachings are actually telling us, instead they're willingly giving up their power or their energy to something outside of themselves. Even with Shani in Hinduism, they honor him in the Singapore temple with a black stone. And that black stone represents his control over the material world and his ability to bless you or curse you in the material realm. And remember, Shani represents the root chakra and your attachment to the physical world. So when you give that energy out to Shani or Saturn, it's like you're basically saying, I want to focus on the material side of myself, that side that connects me to the physical world, the earth, and I'm not ready to go any farther than that. And again, you got all these other religions connecting to Shani or connecting to Saturn, including Satanism, which just so happens to be the one that's the most outright about it. They don't care if you know when we're talking about Satan, we're really talking about Saturn. So it would seem like the main function of all these religions would be to keep you attached to the physical, to keep your energy attached to the material world. And like we talked about before, this is exactly what it seems like the primary role of these celebrities and the highly influential people out there is about, keeping your attention on the material world. Because again, all of these people represent the highest level of material success. And a lot of them are like the ultimate promoters of that full indulgence into the material world. And of course, they all throw up what looks like those 3 6s, which we know is going to take you back to carbon 12, which is pointing right back to the material world. And then a lot of times they place it over their eyes, which could connect back to the eye of providence, the all-seeing eye, which is ultimately going to take you back to Saturn, looking like an eye in the sky.
The past
you got the ones that are
30
just blatantly obvious about it, letting you know exactly what all of this is about.
Just
letting you know that this is about Satan.
Nothing.
This is about the 666 material, and that all of this connects back to Saturn. But if you just think about these celebrities and these influential people, these people that have this
look at her fucking eyes. What are you on, lady?
high level of influence over the masses, and how they again are seeming to be promoting the material world to the masses, and basically saying, hey, this is where it's at, this is what you want to be, this is the level you want to get to. If you want to get to our level of material success, you're gonna have to follow our lead. And then of course a lot of what these people are doing seems to be leading back to 666, the devil, Satan. And again, these are the people that are placed out in front of us as those examples of people that have earned the highest levels of material success on the earth. So it's almost as if these people are literally playing the role of Satan, just like that story of Jesus being tempted by Satan in the wilderness, and Satan telling him you can have access to the whole world. All you have to do is bow down and worship me. Just forget about God in heaven and focus on me. It's like they are subliminally telling you, in order to have what we have, that full access to the material world and that freedom to be able to fully indulge into the material, you have to give into Satan. You have to give into your lower self, your inner beast, your carbon 12, 666. And you have to abandon God in heaven, your higher mind. Remember, that same hand sign that looks like 3 6s is also the Gaian mudra, the mudra of knowledge, the mudra of the mind. So it's like they're subliminally promoting matter over mind.
No,
and it's like they're saying that
need
matter
to
over
not
mind
watch this
leads you
whole
back to the
thing
eye
right
of the sky,
now.
leads you back to Saturn.
I don't want to do the next hour and 20 minutes of this fucking shit. I'm gonna call it here. Maybe I'll watch the rest of it later. This is ridiculous. No one in their fucking right mind would believe this shit. Thank you for watching. Thank you for keeping me company. This is outrageous. I'm gonna go to bed, or at least go hang out with my boyfriend. I'll see you guys later.